Right, yeah. And it's good to see I'm the one with the most hair, which I think has got more to do with genetics, possibly, because my dad had a very thick thatch of hair when he passed away last year. Okay, yeah. My sea time was curtailed by redundancy in 1983. Okay, back to Ian, who I believe, Ian, you're going to walk us through the procedures, the pack, the documentation, so that you're all up to speed and have everything to hand. Everything's digital these days, unless you've printed it off, of course. So back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So we've had our introductions, and welcome again everyone that's here. So part of the business, we've got a pack that if you haven't got it, on the back of your ID card is a QR code, and you can scan that and that'll get you access to all the documentation. So the order of business will be to do the things as we have to by law. And we'll start with the election of tellers. So we'll ask somebody to come and propose the tellers.
Yes, I'm Malcolm Graves.
Malcolm, do you want to go to the podium?
Come up here. Everybody will hear you then. And you've got the interpreters and online.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Malcolm Graves, membership number 118081. I propose that the election of tellers shall be Charles Boyle and David Appleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And could we have somebody to second it? Glenn, thank you.
Morning all, Glenn Cairns, membership number 195026. I second the proposals.
Write that down on your end.
I do, because I want to get it wrong.
You have to wash it off now.
Okay then, thank you very much. Now that means we've got David and Charles as tellers. Should we need a vote? Next one is adoption of the standing orders. Don, thank you.
Standing orders are in the guide to members. Again, if you've been onto the website, downloaded your documents, or you're accessing live online, the standing orders are there. They've been in place since Blackbeard was a member of Nautilusint International, so they're consistent rules for how we do our business, endorsed by the council and previous branch conferences. So, sorry, Dawn, over to you now.
No worries. Dawn Franklin. I'm forwarding standing orders or moving, and my membership number is 205445.
Thank you, Dawn. And somebody to second it, Willie?
Kick the bucket.
Good morning, Willie Jackson, 186592, and council member. I also second the adoption of the.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willie. So that's the standing orders. If anybody wants to read them, they're on page 4 of the guide. Can we have a vote on that? All those in favour, show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Next on the order of business is the minutes of the 8th UK branch conference. We're looking for somebody to propose that, please.
Good morning. Jessica Tyson, 177255. I will propose the minutes of the, whichever one it was that I was asked to do, because I can't remember. I'm very apologise. The 8th, is it? Or something.
The
8th.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you very much, Jess. And to second that.
Malcolm, you're busy.
Good morning again, everyone. Malcolm Graves, membership number 118081. I second that the minutes for the 8th branch conference should be as read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Okay, we'll move to the vote now. All those in favour of adopting the minutes? Against? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone. And now the adoption of the UK branch report, and we'll get Mark to introduce it, please.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So, Mark Dickinson, 999455. Is that the same number as I gave 5 minutes ago?
I think so.
Yeah, because it's written down on that piece of paper there, and I haven't. Can you give me
Yeah,
that
yeah.
piece of paper, actually? I need that piece of paper. Gentlemen, thank you, colleagues. Good morning. I'll try and get myself sorted out now. And I've already lost the page I needed to be on. I'm digital too, you see. I'm referring on my iPad to the report. So, this is effectively this is the UK Committee's report to you, the branch conference, the members assembled here in Bristol for our 9th branch conference. It is a snapshot, although quite an extensive snapshot, of the activities that the union has undertaken on your behalf, overseen, guided by the committee, and it concentrates on our activities in the UK, as this is the branch conference of the UK branch of Nautilus International. It covers, I would say, certainly, I'm 60 years old. It's covered an unprecedented 2-year period in my lifetime, and therefore I can say probably the lifetime of most people in this room. 2 years since, actually more than 2 years really, because effectively the last time we were together in a room, in person, meeting as a group of Nautilus members was in 2018. And as I stand here now, I have to admit, I can't remember whether that was Hull or Cardiff. So we had quite a discussion between the chair and I who was right. I think we were in Hull. Tom's going to check. He probably Instagrammed that, did you, mate, or something? So it was Hull. Thanks, Jess. And you might recall it was also year of European culture, city culture, whatever it's called. And we were all very excited about going to Hull because Hull had been given that that honour. It turned out we weren't in Hull. We were in somewhere about 10 miles from Hull, in probably a Mercure hotel, because they do great deals for us. There was the Humber Bridge was there out my window. I could see the Humber Bridge, so it was fantastic. But there wasn't an awful lot to do in that area, which could have been a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you view that, because we were basically stuck together in the hotel. We spent all our time together. I think we went for a 10-minute walk to a fish and chip shop one night, and that was the limit. The chairman jumped in a taxi and went to see a Norwegian prod punk band called, well, I don't even want to repeat it because I'll get it wrong, which just speaks to his choice of music, which isn't mine, Ulrich. Perhaps we'll explore that theme another time. But 2018, 4 years since we've actually been together physically, because the last meeting in 2020, as mentioned in the report, was online. And of necessity, it was a fairly tightly run event, none of the usual symposium and industry discussions and the wider participation of members and others in the industry. So it's been quite a journey these past couple of years. Clearly, we've had a pandemic which induced a crew change crisis, a global crew change crisis that affected our industry and our members in many, many different ways. Mostly not positive. In fact, I would hesitate to suggest that were any positives about that experience at all would see for us and our members prevented from returning to sea and equally prevented from coming ashore. And as I was explaining to the UK committee yesterday, that's had a profound impact on our industry and on maritime professionals in the UK. And there's just one simple indicator of that. The statistics that the Department for Transport released earlier this year covering the number of active seafarers. As of December 2021, the figures are down 8%, and they attribute that to COVID-19. Now, that impact, that is our members, our people, and our fellow maritime professionals globally, because the problem is repeated elsewhere, saying we've had enough. We don't want to be treated like second-class citizens. We don't want to be refused the ability to go about our lawful employment, to earn a living, to travel without hindrance to and from our vessels, to go ashore for our own welfare and our mental health, frankly. Too many very, very poor experiences during that time. Governments locking seafarers out, locking ships out with no cognizance of the importance of our industry. Sea blindness, we've talked about sea blindness for decades. I felt we'd got beyond that. In 2000, we had a government committed to a tonnage tax, to smart funding, to increasing employment opportunities and training opportunities for young people in this country in an industry which is so important to our nation. And I have to say the UK, as a government, took the lead, quickly declared seafarers key workers, and did, in my view, some great work. Started with Kelly Tolhurst as MP. She inherited the brief just as we went into lockdown. She was replaced by Robert Courts after about 6 months. She was moved to Northern Ireland, I believe, to the ministry to be a minister in Northern Ireland for Northern Ireland. And Robert Courts took over, and until the P&O Ferries jobs massacre, we'd never met him in person. We'd only met him online. But the UK did show leadership in responding to the impact of COVID-19 on our industry, and I think it's right to recognise that. So we had the pandemic, just as we thought that was behind us, and I realise, and I wouldn't pretend for a minute in front of an audience as august and as informed as you are, to suggest that the pandemic is over and all is well and back to normal. It isn't back to normal. One example, too many seafarers are still facing problems getting that important shore leave. Companies are coming up with all sorts of excuses. In fact, some governments, of course, if you trade and work and have to visit China, you'll know how, you watch the news, the same news as I do, you'll know how difficult it still remains to visit and do crew changes or get shore leave in that country. But many countries now, even most recently, Japan has relaxed their COVID restrictions, and things are starting to feel like we are getting back to normal. But there are still challenges, and there's still issues around cadets getting sea time, for example. One company in particular springs to mind, Evergreen, which is in the tonnage tax and trains quite significant numbers of cadets. And there are still problems being reported about that shore leave access. So just as we thought we were emerging from that, we have P&O Ferries. You will be very, very aware of it. Some of you might actually be tired of hearing about it from us, about our Fair Ferries work, about the impact on P&O. In fact, I've had more than one member post on Facebook that, hey, where was the union when I got made redundant back in 1990 or 2000 in the offshore industry, where there's been jobs losses, quite significant job losses, particularly in offshore oil and gas, following the financial collapse in 2008, 2009, and subsequently things seem to be turning around for that now, and of course there's now renewed investment in offshore wind, so there is some hope there. But I have to say, again, a once-in-a-generation experience to be told on the 17th of March, and frankly I was thinking about where I might get a pint of Guinness, sort of after work, of course, to be told that there were rumours that there would be an important message from the management of P&O, and members were being told to stand by. Those at sea were asked to return to port and stand by. And of course, the rumour mill began, and we started thinking about, well, we know the company's been in difficulties. We've spent the last 2 years We dealt with a significant round of redundancies, not 12, 18 months before that, and I'm sure you'll hear from our organising colleagues about that. There's a lot of detail in the report for you to consume, but nothing prepared us for what actually happened. A 2-minute Zoom call, you've lost your jobs. Boom, it's all over. Quite shocking. And I'm very, very proud of the organisation, all the colleagues, all the departments that were then sprung into action in order to defend and try to protect the jobs of our members. And I think very quickly we moved into making sure, or trying to make sure, that the company is held accountable for their unlawful activities. There is no question about the illegality of what they did. Of course, they used the power of being owned by Dubai ports and their deep pockets to attempt to try and buy their way out of their legal difficulties. Nonetheless, it remains that they acted unlawfully, and we will not stop reminding them. But we do have to move on, hence the Fair Ferries campaign, to try to make sure this never happens again. And I think for those who don't work in the ferry sector, I think this has important consequences and opportunities to improve employment rights for all seafarers, in fact all workers in this country, because this practice of fire and rehire on lower terms and conditions has in recent years been prevalent and has had increased notoriety publicly in the press when various companies have tried to do this. The report, you're going to receive reports now from each of the departmental leads, who are going to run through their activities that are in the report. So you're going to get a lot more information about what's in the report. For me, I just wanted to introduce the backdrop to our 2 years of activity. Again, let me just remind you, it's a snapshot. It's not everything we've done. If there's something missing and you think you'd like to say something about that, please, when the chair takes questions later, please do so. It's your opportunity to engage with us on the work that we've done, whether you think we've got it right, whether you think we've got it wrong. We'll always take criticism constructively. We strive in this organisation to continuously improve. That's our goal. That is led by the Council. At UK level, it's also overseen by the UK Committee. And before I go, Chair, just very quickly, I'm sure I've overrun the time you allotted for me, I always do. I just want to say now that the UK Committee has my deepest thanks for their work, supporting us to deliver on behalf of the members. We have we have had a number of UK Committee members stand down in the period since they were elected and to serve on the Council and also on the UK Committee. And I would just like to read out their names for the minutes to thank them personally, but on behalf of you. Paul Minter, Ashley Gale, Graham Fisher, Michael Lloyd. Michael Lloyd has been on the Council and been involved in Nautilus back to Merchant Navy Airline Officers Association. So he's been a staunch supporter of us for decades, and he would have been here. He's not well, and he sent his apologies, so it's worth recording that. Philip Lees as well, of course. Phil is a long-standing member of the Council. He was one of those who was sacked by P&O Ferries, and Phil has taken that very, very badly, but I saw him recently, and he's in good spirits now. So my thanks to Phil. Russ Downs, for many years also, I think one of Sean's predecessors as the RFA lay rep. Russ served on the Council for many years and was a great supporter of Nautilus International. Barry Kahn and also Elliot Layfield. There are some other colleagues I'd like to say a few words about, but I'll save that for this evening at the dinner, when you'll probably, well, I think you will be hearing from me again. You won't keep me down on that, Ian. And I encourage and invite my colleagues to come forward now to introduce their sections of the report, but that's over for you, Chair. my thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. Now then, we've managed to fix the technical issues that we had. So we'll have the video first, and before we get our colleagues up to tell us how they're doing. So, thank you. Hope you all have enjoyed that. It's well done to Helen and her team for producing that. Now then, Martin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Because I can't climb up there, that's why. I am Martin Gray. I am the Executive Officer at Nautilus International in the UK, and my membership number is 198023. I'm here to present the section of the report which is governance and representation, and you can find that in the branch conference report, pages 6 through to 10, I believe. 11. The last 2 years have been quite busy on the governance and representation front, as a lot has needed to be fitted into a short space of time. Obvious things to avoid mentioning, which we're all too aware of, include the work that's been ongoing with P&O ferries and COVID. That's taken up significant amount of the union's resources, as well as resources in needing to innovate and modernise in terms of the way we undertake governance and representation. Various meetings of the TUC were being held online, in addition to our own meetings from the 8th UK Branch Conference. And indeed, this 9th UK Branch Conference is being held in hybrid, with people here and people able to participate and join in from all over the world. And indeed, those people, I look forward to seeing any questions that they have, which they can do by visiting slido.com and entering in the code UKBC22. In terms of work that Nautilus has undertaken on your behalf, we have lost where my speech is on my page.
Happens to the best of us.
I know. I'm going to move into a slightly quicker format, because it's going to be a bit easier, and it's killing me to stand here for this long already. So the things that we've done on your behalf, and for governance and representation, we're very active at the TUC in the UK level. We're also active internationally, and you'll hear more about that next year at the general meeting, where we can talk at even greater length at all the fantastic work we do in partnership with our brethren in the Netherlands, in Switzerland and elsewhere in the world. The key things that we've undertaken have been our active engagement in the furlough scheme. That's something that we could be extremely proud of. We work with the TUC to make sure that was delivered, and something which we haven't been able to cover extensively in the report is the participation that colleagues such as Charles had with that, and the feed-in that we had with that. We've also, on behalf of those that we represent, been able to put seafarers at the very forefront of efforts at the TUC, in part in response to what's been happening with P&O ferries, but in part with what we've been able to do elsewhere, and for the effort and influence that we have, thanks to Mark being a long-standing member of the Executive Committee, who has been elected in October again for another year. Other work that we undertake as well is in partnership with Maritime UK, where Danny McGowan, our international officer, has been undertaking extensive work as Diversity and Maritime Chair, and has been leading the forefront in making maritime a more representative and diverse place for all of us to be able to shine and do well from. The work that we undertake there also feeds into our place as a member of Maritime UK and the partnership that we have with them in making sure that the activities in the Society of UK Maritime Industries put people first, as has been reflected in Maritime 2050, the ongoing review, the efforts that we undertake as part of Mark's work with the Maritime Skills Commission, and all of the different activities we undertake and participate in that make sure that maritime professionals are at the heart and at the forefront of the industry's thinking and development work for the future, as that leads into other elements. Key thing that I need to mention too is we undertook from an internal side a movement away from a former premises we had in the shrubberies in London, and we've streamlined our presence in London to an extent at which we are using our partner, the International Transport Workers Federation's offices in central London, giving us a better location, a more prominent location, that also allows us to work closer with international colleagues and partners and really make sure that your interests as members of the UK branch are represented at the heart of the ITF by giving us that level of access and participation with them and direct engagement. It has been an extremely busy 2 years. For me, it's been an extremely busy couple of months in getting here, and I am extremely proud of the work that everyone at Nautilus has done and that we've done on your behalf through the work we do in governance and representation. I'm going to wrap up with a final point, which is many of you in this room are already members of council, and many of you in this room might be considering getting more involved and active in the union, and I would encourage you to do so, because we are truly a member-led, member-engaged union, and we need as diverse a group of people on council to get and make sure that the way we are representing maritime professionals is effective and is reflective of the industry we're in. So if you do want to get active and more engaged, please come and speak to me at lunchtime. Please come and speak to me throughout the day, where I can explain the benefits of perhaps considering standing for council or just finding out more information. So please do consider that. And finally, that's it from me, Chair. I will move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And next one, we'd like to invite up to the rostrum is Helen Kelly, who's going to talk about campaigns and communications. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Helen and I head up the Communications and Campaigns and Digital department at Nautilus International, and I just want to start by saying, isn't it absolutely lovely to be here in person in Bristol, finally after so long during the pandemic of not being able to see each other. So welcome everybody and thank you. I don't know about you guys, but my concept of time during the pandemic became really quite elastic. So much happened, didn't it, in such a small amount of time, and yet there was this real feeling of panic at the very beginning. Cast your mind back. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew how to respond. Nobody knew how to find any information about how we should act in this situation. And what we realized really quickly within Nautilus is we had to do a number of things. We had to make sure that our members were protected. We had to make sure that our members could go about their work unrestricted. And we had to find new ways of communicating with members, but really crucially, we had to find new ways of helping members tell their own stories. Because while we were all locked up ashore, it was you guys who were still going out to sea, still bringing us all the goods that we needed, the food, the medicines, the PPE, the fuel to heat our homes. So we realized really quickly that what we wanted to do whenever we could, however we could, was to help you guys tell your stories. So I'm going to show you some of the examples of how we tried to do this during the pandemic. I know there's a few people in the room here today who did assist us with this, so thank you all very much for your assistance. These really are highlights, so if you do want to have all the details, please do read the branch conference report, because there's so much detail in that. You can get a heck of a lot more understanding of all the many ways that we helped members throughout the pandemic. But in the meantime, let me see if the clicker will work. It wasn't working earlier. Ooh, here we are. Okay, so I wanted to start off with just a couple of the highlights of the initiatives that we launched during the pandemic. I won't read them out, you can read them for yourself on screen, but the one that I wanted to mention here in particular was that COVID FAQs. There was so much work and so much effort went into these. They were constantly updated. There was a huge job just to find the information. I mean, who knew that we were going to have to fill in forms to exit the country and then come back again and have various tests and this, that, and the other. And of course, every country, their rules changed constantly. So I wanted to highlight this because it was a real group effort across all three of the branches to try and find the information and to make sure that it was verified information and to get that out to our members as soon as possible. So I hope you guys found it interesting, and I would really welcome any feedback on that in future if we ever suffered another situation like this again, how we can help communicate that type of rolling information to you. But a real team effort there, and one that I'm really proud of. Other initiatives so let me go back. It's a bit sticky, isn't it? Next one. Okay, so I will cast your minds back to December 2020. We were in the throes of the crew change crisis, and in the comms team, we launched our Crew Change for Christmas campaign. We really, really wanted this to be member-led, so we reached out to our Nautilus champions and we asked them for their experiences. What were they doing for Christmas? Were they at sea? Were they at home? How were they feeling about it? Could they share some of those stories with us? Some of them were a real celebration. Others, as you can see on the screen, were less so. They were a little bit more difficult. Also, as part of that campaign, we reached out to MPs and other supporters to try and get them to apply pressure to different governments to get seafarers home. Got there, finally. Here's a couple of the supportive MPs, but there was a whole host of them here in the UK, and that was also part of our work to try and get seafarers that key worker status. Really pleased with the support from MPs. Another part of that campaign, if I can get the clicker working, we launched a video Q&A with Mark Dickinson, and it was just to try and provide awareness of what the crew change crisis was.
It's a humanitarian crisis.
Can we get some
sound? There's no two ways of describing it. That's exactly what we're dealing with. The crew change crisis is a humanitarian crisis.
So I won't show you the whole lot of these videos. I just want to give you a snapshot. If you want to catch up with any of the video or audio that I'm going to play on my presentation, please go to YouTube or to our SoundCloud account. You can catch up with all of them. We also launched some really amazing podcast interviews with members who were stuck at sea. These people often had been working at sea months beyond their contract. They didn't know when they were going to get home, desperately wanted to be with family at that time of the year, as you can imagine, and just really didn't know what was going to happen to them. So I reached out to a couple of them to interview them for a podcast, and here's a quick snapshot if I can get it going. This one, you're going to hear me first because it's a member who was working in the super yacht sector. She didn't want her voice to be published because she was worried about blacklisting. So let me see if I can get that going. Oh, no, gone past it. Fat thumbs. Can we play? Thank you.
This podcast has been voiced by an actor in order to keep... This podcast has been voiced by an actor in order to keep the seafarer's identity anonymous.
I'm from a separated parent family, and restrictions mean I can't legally spend time with my mum. She said she feels further away from me now, even though I'm living around the corner, than when I was back at sea.
Okay, so you get the idea on that one. One of the initiatives that I really want to talk about is our Nautilus Champions initiative. This was launched during the pandemic, and this is a group of really involved individuals, members, who help us campaign, they help us communicate, and they help kind of with our developmental work within the union. They really act as spokespeople for us, and they've done so many amazing things just in the last 2 years. They have been on broadcast TV, they've done live radio, they've done interviews about their jobs and their conditions, and they've really, really helped us kind of raise the profile of seafarers, not just in the UK, but globally as well. So when we launched this program, we launched a little YouTube video, just a fun one of some of the members kind of throwing a ball to each other. Let me see if that will work. There's no sound on this one. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this style of kind of social media video. It's not on our YouTube, so you're going to have to scroll back through our social media accounts back to about March 2020 if you want to catch up with that one. But you get the idea. There we go. Yeah. And if anyone is interested in joining that program, we are still running it. I'm looking to refresh it, get some new faces in, some new energy. So please come up and say hello, let me know during the conference, and we can have a quick chat about all the very many great things that we can do. So this is our Build Back Fairer campaign. It's obviously the theme of today's conference as well, but our champions helped us launch this way back in January 2021. It's got 5 key asks, which you can see up on the screen. We've also got a Build Back Fairer manifesto. So if you haven't had a look at that, please download that off our website. This is our blueprint for a more progressive and sustainable future for seafarers and the maritime industry. And we took this message to a number of events throughout the last year. It includes the Maritime UK annual event in Liverpool. We went to the Labour conference in Brighton, and we also took it to COP26 in Glasgow. I think I also have a video for this one, for the launch video, so bear with. Here we go. Oh no, it's gone past. I'll play this one in full.
When the pandemic hit and the world ground to a halt, seafarers kept on working.
From keeping our shelves stocked to transporting medicines, including vaccines.
We were on the front line of COVID. That's why we were designated as key workers.
Despite all the efforts, the pandemic still hit us hard.
Many of us suffered redundancies, loss of income, and cuts to our working conditions.
Travel restrictions left many of us trapped at sea, unable to be with family and loved ones.
And new outbreaks means borders being closed and seafarers left stranded.
Now, as we look towards the kind of future we want to see,
our message is simple.
Don't forget about seafarers.
Let's build a positive future and inspire the next generation to perform our vital tasks at sea.
Don't just build back better.
Build back fairer.
Build back fairer.
Build back fairer.
One of my favourites for the last 2 years. It was really impactful taking that to those events, because often you just get the owners there or you get shore-based employers there. You don't really get the voice of the seafarer. So I was really, really pleased to get that one out, and thank you to everybody in this room who took part. Okay, another program that we launched during the pandemic was our Sea to City mentoring program. This was launched in February 2021 and is a joint initiative between Nautilus International and Maritime London. We seek to pair our members who are considering a move ashore with a maritime professional who is part of the Maritime London network. So in the first year, we had 5 members complete that program. We had a live event at London International Shipping Week. We launched a webinar series to promote it, and we now plan to grow that network, starting with the Northwest in 2023. Now, can we play this video? I'll give you a little bit of a clip of the webinar series that we've launched. Can we fast forward this bit? Unions, industry supporters, MP, and the public as well. Within the first 3 weeks, and that's by about April 5, we had got more than 3,500 pieces of press coverage, which is astounding. That includes broadcast, it includes radio, and that is international. And what that equates to is that number you see up there, 529 million total reach globally. That's how many people potentially saw something about P&O ferries and the effect on seafarers through those first 3 weeks. A lot more people would have seen it subsequent to the 3 weeks, but that's just that first snapshot. So it just shows you how intense the media interest was at that time. Now, social media was, of course, really, really important to our response and our way of getting our members' experiences out there, because, of course, most members were muzzled at that point if they had either signed back with the company or were looking to get a deal, and they were also very worried about reprisals from the company. So social media was really important to our campaign. The most popular tweet was one by Mark, where there you go. We were really, really lucky. The supporters of Liverpool FC Club agreed to hold up one of our banners at one of their matches, and it was broadcast live. And then, of course, it just went crazy on loads of social media platforms. So that particular tweet from Mark was the most popular. But we also launched on TikTok during the campaign, which was pretty cool. And a video, our very, very first video, got 1.3 million views, and that was because it was a recorded video of security guards going on board a P&O ship, asking all the seafarers to leave immediately. So really pleased to kind of get those messages out across social media. We also worked really, really closely with government. We have been lobbying government ever since the March 17. Mark and Martin have been in various forums, Mickey as well. Hopefully we can run this video, because this was the first joint select committee where Mark spoke at, and the chair had some very scathing words for Mr. Hebblethwaite. So can we give that one a roll? from Mr. Hebblethwaite there. Thanks. Thank you anyway. So longer term, our response, as you know, is the Fair Ferries campaign. We've developed this with support of industry partners, and the strategy proposes a national framework for ferry operators here in the UK. Our 5 key asks are on the screen, but of course we also have our Fair Ferries manifesto that is also on our website, so please, if you don't have that to hand, please do download that. We took this campaign, as Mark said, to the TUC, but we went to the We Demand Better rally first, which is a TUC rally that was in London in the summer. Mark spoke in front of 30,000 people and got a lot of support from the people down there that day. We also took the message to the TUC Congress in Brighton. We had motions to Congress, a question to Labour leader Keir Starmer, and we hosted a roundtable event. We didn't stop there. We also took that campaign to the Labour Party conference, the Conservative Party conference, and the SNP party conferences. And we will, of course, continue to work with all governments of all stripes to try and get those protections into law for our members and for all seafarers. We are continuing to monitor a couple of pieces of legislation as they go through the Houses. So that is the Seafarers' Wages Bill and the Harbours Act. And if you want to get involved with this campaign, there is still a lot more that we can do together. So again, please reach out to me or reach out to anybody else within the team, and we would love to get you on board. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through these last few. Offshore wind workers' concession. It is a visa system, basically, where employers are able to bring in workers from outside the UK. It's despite, we believe, we know there is no evidence of a skill shortage here in the UK, and information emerging that seafarers, resident UK seafarers, are losing their jobs. We've just seen media reports, and we've got feedback from members that they are losing their jobs because of this visa concession. We believe it is undermining the government's commitment under the Maritime 2050 plan to invest in the maritime workforce, and we think it should be scrapped, and we will continue to lobby government on that point. We have just launched a survey of members, so if you are working or have worked in the offshore wind sector and you want to take part in that survey, let me know and I will send you the link so you can give us your feedback, and thank you. Nationality and Borders Bill. This was a successful campaign, and I'm really pleased about the work that we were able to achieve. So this bill would have made it a criminal offence to facilitate the arrival or entry of an asylum seeker into the UK, even if this was done to save the person's life. And the really horrible thing about it was it came with a possible life sentence for the master of the ship who was involved or could have been involved in that type of rescue. Seafarers would have been criminalised for fulfilling their obligations under international law. And thankfully, with the help of partner unions and other organisations, our legal team and our lobbying team were able to get some amendments to that bill as it was passing through the Houses to ensure that seafarers will not be criminalised in this circumstance. So really pleased to say that we won Best Lobbying Campaign at this year's MEMCOM Awards for those efforts, and thank you to the wider team for being able to make that constructive change within the law. Thank you. Our Maritime Barometer is a survey of 2,000 people in the general public. It's really to kind of see what their awareness is of the maritime industry. Do they know who we are and what we do? No, of course they do not. I mean, the main takeaway there is that it's only 0.1% of the population know that 90% of goods or over 90% of goods coming into the country come in via ship. Makes you sick, doesn't it? But, you know, this is just the level of knowledge that we have generally. We're doing a lot to try and combat this. We have been for many, many years. We've now, in our second year of this survey, again, you can see the full reports online, but we've launched a podcast, a really cool podcast called Off Course, A Sideways Look at Life at Sea, where we're kind of talking about some of these issues that have come up in the survey. So things like people believe that there's more shark attacks every year than attacks of piracy. People don't know what seasickness is. People don't realise that so few women work within the industry. So we're kind of talking to some really interesting people with some really interesting stories to try and break through some of that sea blindness. Now, this was the very first launch episode. It's with the real-life Captain Phillips, who was on the Maersk Alabama when it was taken by pirates. And he does a wonderful interview. Check it out on SoundCloud, but I'll just give you a really quick snippet here if I can get it working.
I have no ill will to
Oh, no!
5 years
Oh.
old, 20 to 25 years old, but they made a decision and they became thugs. And what they did is thuggery. Basically, it's criminalization on the high seas. We call it piracy. We don't give people hope. If we don't give people a chance, if we don't give people a chance to get their family past where they were, people turn to other solutions. And I understand the solution, but I still believe they have to pay the repercussions.
And that was pretty amazing getting him on the first episode. We got that via a sister union in the US, so big kudos to them for helping out. And kudos to Robert as well, who's our podcast host. Give us a wave, Robert. There you go. We just launched the second one last week, which is an interview with the leader, the lady who launched Maritime CEO. She's also part of Wista India. That's a really interesting podcast. And the third one out next month is going to be on seasickness. So please all subscribe. Final slide. Oh no, sorry. We also launched a TikTok video, second to last slide, to promote the podcast. So let's play that. This one's really quite funny.
I'm going to give you this flag. Can you just have a look at it and try and tell me what flag that is?
I've got no idea. I'd say maybe one of the Channel Islands, Guernsey or something.
Oh mate, I've got no idea. No clue.
Right, but there's a whole series of those and they're going out on TikTok and it's basically just to show in a kind of funny, kind of what way, just the lack of knowledge of the shipping industry. So check those out on TikTok and across other social media. As I said, last slide, we also released our 10-year social conditions report in January 22. What with everything else, this kind of seems like ages ago, but this is the big one. This is where we asked our members what it's like working on board ship. We do it every 10 years. It's the fourth time we've done it now, so it's been running for 40 years, and there's some common themes throughout those 40 years. This time round, we got 1,623 members responding, which is the most ever. So thank you all for anybody in this room who took part. You can kind of see some of it going by on the screen here, but again, if you've not seen that full report, it's really, really interesting. Please download that off our website. And please take part in 9 years' time. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. Next one up to the rostrum will be Gary. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try and follow that, and there's no video, so... But I am known to go off script a little bit, so get ready for that. Even Keir Starmer, in asking him a question, I went completely off script. They were about to mute the button at the side. So, the ones that will have been to many conferences before know that I normally get up and move on the organising report. We're going to do it slightly different today, which most of you who've been before will be glad of, because it means you don't have to listen to me for 25 minutes. And what we're going to do is that within the organising report, my colleagues Mickey Smith and Derek Byrne will be getting up, so we'll split it sort of 9 or 10 minutes each. But for the ones that don't know, I'm Gary Elliott, Head of Organising, which encompasses all of our industrial work, membership, recruitment. And as intimated by Martin in his earlier comments on governance, we are a membership-led union, and organising is at the heart what our members do every day, as are other departments, obviously, but it puts us at the forefront of everything that happens with our members. And the report that you're going to see will highlight some of that activity that's took place over that period. Within organising, we try to keep it as simplistic as possible. We're there to represent our members, we're there to grow the union, sustain the union and going forward, and we try to keep that to an aim of increasing our membership densities where we already organise, going into greenfield sites where we don't currently organise, and I'll touch a little bit on that, and Derek will within his recruitment report. And also we look to extend CBA collective bargaining coverage, because where we've got collective bargaining, by default we will tend to have better terms and conditions and rates of pay. So they tend to be the main objectives for organising moving forward. Just as a matter of an overview, rather than go into major detail, industrially, as I say, Mickey Smith will report on a number of areas, especially surrounding P&O and some of the other areas that have been very high profile. But what we've managed to do since the last report is maintain very high standards of service towards our members. Nothing's changed in respect to that. And we've also looked to sign a whole multitude of collective bargaining agreements across a number of sectors, from the cruise sectors to the renewable sector, tankers, ferries, etc. The one area that we haven't signed collective bargaining agreements is in the yacht sector, but again we will come on to that under Derek's report. We've also restarted the college visits, the cadets, and I'll touch a bit on that in a moment or two. Rachel, who's with us today, heads our activity within the college networks, and we'll be looking to increase activity within that as well. We touched on the fair ferries, we touched on the P&O. Again, the ones who were at UK committee yesterday would have heard, you know, we've had the history. The ones of us here in the 1980s have had the history with BP. We've had the history in 2005 with Irish Ferries and the dispute with SIP2 when they were looking to move to low-cost models. We now have the P&O disgrace that occurred. And we have others, you know, as we sit here today, we're fighting issues down on the Thames in London and across other aspects, which is obviously very disappointing. But I think the thing that we need to remember about the P&O, and the last thing I'll say on it, because otherwise Mickey will have nothing to report on, I think it's important to think about the human element of it. For every seafarer, there's a family that sits behind that. And I think that's what we try to intimate at the TUC. You know, it's whilst we're dealing with governments and we're dealing with ministers and we're dealing with international regulations, etc., we've got to remember there is a human touch here. There is an individual who's lost 30, 40 years career at sea with that employer, that's provided loyalty and dedication to that employer over all of that time, to a UK employer with centuries of responsibility. And behind that seafarer, there's families, there's children, there's partners, there's etc. etc. So it's a much wider aspect than just the industry itself. Touching on the recruitment, within the overview, we've had since the last report structure, we've had a small decline within membership. But where it's actually been bolstered, or where we expect it to be bolstered, will be across the cadets and across the college network, where we'll look to actually get out to the colleges and recruit, so they become the future main rate payers of the future. We've also had an enormous growth in the yacht sector, and that's increased significantly since we last met. We've been growing at nearly 250% month on month within the membership. And again, within our team, we've got Cheryl here today, who sits in the yacht team that's headed by Derek. And the activity that's being carried out in there, both industrially, recruitment, strategic-wise, is immense. And to actually grow, it's now become the biggest sector within the union. so membership-wise. So it shows you how much it's grown in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And we have more strategic partners there. And ironically, even though CBA coverage is one of our main objectives for a department, ironically, in the one sector where we have no CBA, we don't negotiate pay, we don't negotiate terms and conditions, we look after individual seafarers who have a multitude of issues, we have our highest growth, we have our highest membership, and highest densities. So it's something to think about as the model on organising moves forward. In addition to the yachts, I say I'll leave it there because otherwise Derek, I'll have nothing to say when he gets up, but we are looking heavily in the renewable sector, the wind farm sector, we're heavily involved in. We've signed a multitude of collective bargaining agreements again. We've already heard of some of the difficulties that are occurring within that sector. We've signed some high-profile, high-standard, high-quality collective bargaining agreements within that sector that will lead the way for the future. You know, we've created a 10-point charter that we believe is a minimum standard on wages, pensions, etc., within that. And we're looking for employers to embrace that. And we're heavily involved with the Workboat Association, who have about 130 employers. We went to their AGM earlier this week. One of our colleagues who's not here spent 2 days with the Workboat Association. And that's all about getting some partnership, an integral part of what happens within that with the employers that allows us to actually start organising within that sector. We've also just been invited over to Denmark to meet with a major employer with 44 vessels within the renewable sector that are looking to set up in the UK, and they want a UK model. They want to employ UK officers, and we see that again as a major step forward. I mean, who would have thought that an employer or another union based in Norway or Denmark or the Baltic states would actually invite a UK union over to talk about personnel? So it's a major step forward again within that sector. But it'll take time. The yacht sector's took 13, 14 years to get where we are today. And the last 2 years we've seen the benefit of that. But it doesn't happen overnight. We're then looking to move into fisheries. We've had initial talks within the sector, but obviously that's a bit more of a slow burner, and Charles will talk on that within his legal report when he finishes. And just to finish off on the overview 2023 and what we're going to be looking to do and the digital vision and platform that we've heard in the previous presentation, this is going to be very important for us because within the yacht sector, and you'll hear something this afternoon, I believe there's going to be a presentation this afternoon from our MTM partners. We're introducing a digital service record book. And if we turn the clock back, it was unheard of. 10, 12 years ago, we never had a service record book. Then, sort of 8, 9 years ago, we introduced a manual service record book within the yacht sector, which become a major recruitment tool and become a major facility. Now we're going to digitalise that, and it's going to revolutionise that, both that sector and the way of recording sea time. So again, Derek will touch on that. Within the cadets and the colleges, Rachel's been heavily involved in looking at TUC research collaboration, and we've secured funding to look at why our cadets are, how we recruit them, where we recruit them. Are they staying? What's the retention issues? What's the issues at hand with cadets? So it's sort of a research gathering, and we've got the funding for that to better understand what's actually happening out in the colleges amongst our cadets. But some of the initial views that we're already aware of, you know, a lot of cadets haven't had a pay increase for 10 years within them companies. You know, if we were to turn back a couple of decades ago, we used to negotiate on behalf of cadets with the companies. We'd have negotiations with a company, and the cadets are part of that workforce with that company. But as that link has started to disperse with the crewing agencies and the sort of loss of that relationship, it's took away elements of that. But it's ridiculous that we can go in a college and be sitting next to someone who's on 7,000, 8,000 or whatever, and someone else sat next to them's on 12 or 13,000 because they happen to be with a company who take it seriously So we've got to get that modification right across, and that's what this will allow us to do with the cadets as a whole. Final two for 2023 that we're looking to develop: lay rep training. Obviously had quite a number of activists join the union since we last met, and it's important that they have appropriate training and appropriate support from the union to take forward the work that you do on behalf of Nautilus, which is invaluable. There is no coincidence that where we're organised and where we have lay reps in place in companies, again, we tend to have better terms and conditions, we tend to have better pay rates, we're organised better, our membership densities are higher, and that's because people who work for the company are the best people to have in place to understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So that is a major priority for us in 2023, to make sure that it's, first of all, appropriate, it's fulfilled, the modules are how we want them to be set up, and it gives them the tools to go forward and help to organise. And also, we'll be looking at financial planning, the Nautilus Pension Association, and revamping what we do in respect to that. And it's not just about the people who are leaving the industry and might be interested in the pensions, it's about the young people coming in and what their financial planning is for the future. Also pensions, obviously, but there's far more issues that come under financial planning than just pensions.
And you're ready, Gary?
So that's my overview. Is that my 10 minutes?
You've had it.
Oh, I told you, didn't I? Hey, I told you. Right, I'll pass over to Derek, recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And on you come, Derek.
Thanks, Chair. Morning conference. Derek Byrne, Head of Recruitment and Membership, to present the membership report. Over the past 2 years, as Gary said, there's been an overall decrease in members in full benefit. However, in 2022, we have seen an increase in new joiners. The main growth area of the union continues to be the super yacht sector, with the majority of new joiners over the past 2 years coming from that sector. One of the main reasons for the growth in the yacht sector is it's twofold, really. It's the reputation that the team are getting in recovering unpaid money on behalf of members, working very closely with the legal department. This year, the team have already recovered 1.6 million on behalf of members. Obviously, this year, we've seen an increase in number of cases, requests for support, requests regarding unpaid wages from members working on yachts, Russian-owned yachts, because of the sanctions imposed on Russian oligarchs. The second area of growth, as Gary touched on, is the sea service verification that we do on behalf of the MCA. In 2018, we were approved by the MCA to do this on their behalf, and that's proved a major recruitment tool over the past few years. Earlier this year, following requests from members, and in line with the union's strategic plan and 2030 vision, we began the development of a digital service record book, which we're planning to launch early in the new year. You'll hear and see a lot more about the digital service record book this afternoon that Gary alluded to earlier. In the wind farm sector, we continue to work closely with the Workboat Association. The AGM was earlier this week, attended by a colleague of ours, with 120 companies also in attendance there. In the wind farm sector, we've signed a collective bargain agreement with Marine Manning Guernsey for members who serve on the Louis Dreyfus vessel called the Wind of Hope. Moving on to the cadets, the COVID-19 pandemic obviously affected recruitment. It meant we couldn't visit colleges. A lot of the recruitment visits were done online, done by teams, etc. We've now recommenced the college visits, which we've started this year, and they'll increase again next year. It's obviously resulted in more cadets than previous years joining the union. We're working in collaboration again, as Gary mentioned, with the TUC on a digitalisation project, specifically looking at how we organise digitally with the cadets. That's included cadets being interviewed by a third-party independent company, with a couple of colleagues, including myself from Nautilus, sitting in on those interviews. and some of the feedback from the cadets is quite interesting. Lay rep training, again, Gary mentioned. We've been working with the TU's education department to develop some online training modules, which we're hoping to launch in January. We had a chat yesterday at the lay reps meeting about what those modules would contain, and more importantly, what the lay reps themselves wanted them to contain, what they wanted to get out of it. Very much the focus is it's the lay reps course. We need to give them what they want. So yesterday's lay rep meeting was quite useful for that. So thanks to all those who were there yesterday and gave some very good input into it. In the Pensions Association, we are continuing to receive inquiries from members on a regular basis. We've recently become an affinity partner with Lighthouse Group Financial Services. In partnership with Lighthouse, we will be planning a number of financial planning sessions in the new year. Planning for retirement, as Gary says. I've also seen another webinar they do called the Financial Squeeze, and they do another webinar usually aimed at students, but we're going to sort of modify that so it's more aimed at cadets. And that's the recruitment and membership report. I'll now hand you over to Mickey Smith.
Thank you very much, Derek. And next up on the roster will be Mickey Smith with the industrial.
Morning conference, Mickey Smith, Head of Industrial, Nautilus International. First I'm going to have to start open my little address to you regarding P&O ferries. There's no doubt numerous people in the room will be well aware that I did work for that company for 27 years and before I escaped and came to Nautilus International back at the end of 2013. Started from 2014, but the fact is I worked there as a rating and an officer for a long period of time. And yeah, P&O Ferries was, as far as I was concerned, well, it still is, it was the best ferry company in Europe. You know, probably upset quite a few people, think it's Calmac. I say Calmac's the best, obviously the best paying. You know, I mean, all down to the members at Calmac, the strong membership and density we have at Calmac. And I have the privilege now to look after the members that work for Calmac Ferries. But as I say, I'll be very brief about P&O because, as I say, everything was a struggle with this company throughout the years, negotiating with them. You know, I remember years ago going to a meeting, we came out with nothing, and it was a success because all they wanted to do was attack people's terms and conditions. That's what they did for years, reducing, threatening terms and conditions, you know. And as I say, I'm talking about now, these last 2 years, we were very busy, the industrial team, you know, dealing with P&O in particular. The fact is the struggles we had with the management. But the fact is, it's all there in the pages, 26 to 41, you know. And as I say, the industrial team, we're basically reacting to bread and butter issues faced by the membership out there. They're the first people to contact. You know what I mean? I want to pay, pay respect and thanks to the industrial team, the industrial organisers we have. You know, Steve Dorn, John Capel, Johnny McKinsey, Rachel Lynch, and the two administrators, excellent workers as well, Sharon Shepherd and Samantha Udall, who worked very, very hard. You know, what we were doing with the insolvency service, you know, was we were obviously gutted the fact that the insolvency service didn't proceed with their criminal investigations in relation to P&O. But P&O might have thought they won the battle, but they're not going to win the war. Our General Secretary has already alluded to that. You know, obviously attend more meetings. It's funny because people say to me, Mickey, like 260 members we lost at P&O Ferries. Like, that's a lot of work taken off you. And I do say this, and I mean this, I'm as busy now dealing with P&O than I was before they illegally sacked our members, before they illegally sacked 786 loyal, hard-working employees. And may God forgive them. But I'll move on to other issues because, as I say, we deal with a lot of stuff, bread and butter issues with the first port of call. But the fact is that we're still, obviously, we suffer with a lot of pay terms and conditions and you know, companies blaming COVID for the loss of profits, etc., etc. we were getting pay freezes. We were, you know, it's hard on the members, of course, because at the end of the day, we're there to represent the best of our abilities, and I believe we do that in the organising department. That's everybody in the organising department, and that's industrial. You know, we need everybody in the team, and we get that. You know, we get the communications doing a fantastic job. We need legal. David and P&T is fantastic. You know, leadership. You know, this is what we do. We're all one team, Nautilus International. We need to be, and we have to be, one union across all branches. I know we're talking about the UK branch, but we need to. But to say that the fact is we're still waiting on other issues. But what I've noticed now is, thanks to the team, and I mean team, I mean Team Nautilus, is the fact that we're now to see increase in pay awards, and hopefully, as what the GS said yesterday at the meeting, that we are going north with the pay awards. Like some have received their appeal ports 9% been accepted by the members. Others that 10.1 out for consultation with another company. I'm just waiting for Stannis, but I think I might have a bit of a struggle on that one. But there's issues out there. But as I say, I want to thank the team. Obviously, I can't mention all the companies that we deal with because, as I say, you've seen the report there. It's very detailed, and the team's worked hard. But the fact is, in all sectors, the cruise sector, the oil and gas, the renewables, the deep sea, and as I say, we're out there fighting for the membership because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. Proud to be working for the membership. As I say, I set where aim was quite a few years ago, and I attained my goal to become an official and organiser for Nautilus. You know, we do punch above our weight, and I think I say I have no qualms saying that. I was at a conference workshop in Dublin last Friday, Saturday for Forsa, which is the second biggest union in Ireland, and I was there to talk about trade union responsibilities, and I spoke about P&O at length there. And also spoke of what's going on there, what we're facing, exploitation. And let's be honest, there is exploitation out there. It'll never go away. The flags of convenience, because basically we had a relationship, was a marriage of convenience with P&O. I'll finish off on them again. But what I will finish off is the fact that, you know, we may be seeing higher pay increases. You know, we're fighting for the members out there. But not forgetting, last but not least, the RFA, who are still under pay constraints. And we're obviously going to be forceful with the Commodore and his team to say that back to the negotiating table, represent our members, because at the end of the day, 2.95% uplift in salary is just not good enough. There's a cost of living crisis. Not only is a cost of living crisis out there, it's a cost of exploitation, the price of fuel and everything else. You know, the companies say to us, our fuel bills are going up too. Yeah, well, their fuel bills are going up, you know, because they haven't probably hedged properly. But who am I? I remember somebody saying to me before, many a year ago, Mickey, thanks very much for your union representation, but we're here to manage. And my response has always been, yeah, thank you for that, but you're managing to do a poor job. So that's my little speech over. It's always short and sweet, and I look forward to speaking to you later on. I say, you want anybody any questions, want to see me at lunchtime or whatever, glad to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mickey. And we'll get David up next, please.
Morning all. For those that don't know me, my name is David Appleton. I'm Head of Professional and Technical, and I'm pleased to introduce the Professional and Technical Section report of Professional Technical Section of the UK Branch Conference report. As other colleagues have mentioned, it would be nice to stand here and say that the last 2 years have been fairly uneventful and it's all been routine business, but as we all know, that hasn't been the case. Last 2 years have been extremely busy for the department, dealing with fallout from the pandemic and the situation in Ukraine. And we've worked very hard to address issues that have arisen for members as they have come about. But I could have spent my allotted 5 minutes and much more talking about the work we carried out during the pandemic, but as we hope that that subsides into the past, and as we are a forward-looking organisation, I've decided to focus on the future and specifically on the future skills and the work streams the department has been involved in to ensure that UK seafarers are equipped with the education and training they need to make them the go-to choice for companies in an industry which is increasingly being shaped by advances in technology and the drive for decarbonisation. In June 2021, the Maritime Skills Commission published its findings into its review of the cadet training system, and the recommendations contained within amounted to, if implemented successfully, a root and branch review of the entire UK training system, which, in our opinion, is wholly justified. Whilst recognising that our training system continues to produce some of the best and most highly valued officers in the world, we know that we can't afford to rest on our laurels. Feedback from members has indicated that the UK training system has become outdated, with a growing gap between what is taught and what happens on board, and a situation which is only likely to worsen in the future. In November 2019, the MCA launched its Cadet Training and Modernisation Programme. It's an ambitious two-year programme aimed at implementing the recommendations of the MSc report. Nautilus committed a significant amount of resource to this project, with Mark sitting on the high-level oversight board and myself on the programme board, and also a member of the various subcommittees that are carrying out the detailed work. And for our involvement in that work, we've been able to drive discussions to ensure that the recommendations are implemented as intended, to the benefit of our members, and any attempts to water them down have been resisted. We're currently only halfway through that programme, and already significant achievements have been made, the most notable of which is the announcement of an increase in SMART funding to cover up to 50% of training, in addition to offering incentives to companies to employ officers once they're qualified. With the MCA taking on far more responsibility for the content and delivery of UK cadet training, there have been questions raised as to the future role of the MNTB, which Nautilus has sought to influence in the best interest of our members. We've participated in the review of the MNTB's constitution, which allows a wider representation of ship owner representatives whilst ensuring that our voting power is maintained. We have fed into the Cadet 2 review, which is a review being undertaken into the future role of the MNTB as tasked by the former Shipping Minister, Robert Coates. We have taken an active role in the MNTB's own internal strategy review. And myself, as chair of the MNTB Skills Committee, I have instigated a review of the terms of reference of that committee, including its membership, to ensure that it's best placed to deliver the future programmes that our members will need. Whilst we believe all this work is vitally important, we've also not been afraid to address the elephant in the room, which is that no matter how up-to-date and modern the UK's training programme is, and no matter how much money the government provides, if we're unable to attract the right number of cadets into the industry, then it won't be of any use at all. We've seen companies struggling to attract young people to career at sea for a number of years, which in our opinion is due largely to the poor terms and conditions on offer, as previously been mentioned, in comparison to apprenticeships in particular. Delays and bureaucracy, which is being caused by the MCA, with cadets waiting unacceptable amount of time for their exams and for production of the NOEs, and most important of all, the substandard sea experience which is being received by many cadets, particularly those sponsored by tonnage tax companies. To this end, we have taken steps to improve the sea time experience, including instigating a thorough review of the MTB guidance and training at sea, working with the MCA to address issues relating to exams and NOEs, and lobbying government and industry to take heed of the MSc Cadet Report's recommendations in relation to the sea time experience, to clarify where responsibility lies for ensuring ships are suitable for cadets and making sure the guidance is properly enforced. During the pandemic, the government recognised the value of UK seafarers, designating them as key workers, and they've contributed a significant amount of money to the future training of cadets. But we now believe it's time they take action to ensure that the quality of sea time and training experience for those cadets properly reflects their value, and we intend to make sure that they do so. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And if we can have Charles next, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Boyle, Director of Legal Services. I'm pleased to present the legal section of the Brands Conference report. Basically, my remit is obviously dealing with the legal work for the union, either in-house or outsourcing it to lawyers, firms as appropriate. The types of cases we deal with are personal injury claims, employment-related claims, maritime incidents where we help members with legal support if they've been investigated by authorities following collisions, pollution, etc. I also advise senior officials of the union on legal issues and policy levels, particularly at ILO level, helping Mark, the General Secretary, a lot on maritime labour-related stuff. So I'll go through some highlights of the report. I won't cover all of it, but I hope you all get time to read it. As David said, the last 2 years, I think it would be fair to say, has been led by three major issues. Firstly, the pandemic, then the P&O sackings, and then the sanctions against Russian oligarchs and yacht owners, which has led to huge cases of non-payment of seafarers for us, particularly in the super yacht sector. Now, the detail of the P&O sackings is well versed. We all know that it was a shocking story of 786 seafarers being suddenly sacked on the 17th of March, and the union reacted, I think, internally very impressively towards that. We immediately formed a team within the union to give input from the various departments' expertise on how to respond to this issue. The seafarers, more or less left with no choice, signed up to compromise agreements or settlement agreements, which barred them from taking claims to the Employment Tribunal. Now, the major issue here was that P&O didn't carry out the collective consultation required under the Trade Union Act 1992. And one of the issues that has come into the news recently is why was P&O not prosecuted for failure to report these issues to the Secretary of State or the flag states concerned. Now, I've had a very close look at this, and certainly what has been exposed is the need for the 1992 Act to be amended. Because whereas employers in the maritime industry have a duty to report proposed redundancies of 20 or more employees, not to the Secretary of State of the country concerned, but to the flag state of the ships. And this needs to be addressed, because what is Bermuda going to do about it, or Cyprus, or the Bahamas in a case like this? Another issue has been that the way that the Act is drafted, although it criminalises a failure to report proposed redundancies to the Secretary of State of the UK concerning land-based workers, it doesn't criminalise the failure to do so in a maritime context when the competent authorities are external foreign flag states. So I've already been in touch with the TUC about this, and they have given me their support. I'm going to draft a letter for the TUC, which hopefully Francis O'Grady will sign, and we'll be writing to BAYS, which has oversight of the 1992 Act, to get that amended in various respects to try and make sure that this sort of behaviour is criminalised in future. Turning now to the response during the pandemic, then that period led to unprecedented pressures on all departments within Nautilus, including legal, with huge amounts of cases of repatriation issues, non-payment issues, sudden dismissals, etc. I think it was particularly acute in the super yacht sector, and I was working closely with Derek's team to basically try and help them resolve lots of their issues. And it was during that period we started to get exponential increase in yacht members, new yacht members joining, which is obviously very welcome. In May this year, I attended Geneva, the ILO, with Mark, our General Secretary, in connection with amendments to the Maritime Labour Convention. Now, this was the fourth such session since the MLC came into force. It was actually part 2 of the 4th STC. Part 1 was last year, which was held virtually and dealt with various issues, but this particular part dealt with the amendments to the MLC, and I think it was very successful. We didn't get everything we wanted, but I think we got a lot of good movement there, and some of the examples of the amendments that will be coming into force in December 2024 are set out in my report. For instance, seafarers will be entitled to appropriately sized PPE. Now, this has been the subject of a debate in previous branch conferences regarding concerns that some PPE, like haphazard suits, etc., don't fit females, or do they fit them when they're pregnant? Now, this will be enshrined in the MLC to make sure that PPE is not just standard size, that it must fit all persons. Now that drinking water will then be free under the MLC. At the moment, ship owners are required to provide drinking water, but not required to provide it free of charge. That will change. Nutritious meals must be well balanced. And again, there's some movement on social media where ship owners now must provide free of charge social connectivity, but there's a lack of definition on what that really means. However, in terms of internet access, ship owners and port states must now provide internet access. However, if there are any charges, those must be reasonable in costs. I won't go through all the amendments. Those are just some of the main ones set out there. Turning now to the UK's national minimum wage, the union was involved with the government in basically legislating to extend the national minimum wage a few years ago so that it covers all seafarers regularly working in UK waters and on the UK sector of the continental shelf. Now, there's a bit of this that's also relevant to the fallout of the P&O issue, in that Grant Shapps' 9-point plan that was announced soon after the sackings. He wanted to extend the national minimum wage to a greater number of seafarers visiting the UK who don't actually work all the time in UK waters, but they're coming in on ferries. So the Seafarers' Wages Bill is currently going through Parliament, and that will extend what's called a national minimum wage equivalence. So some sort of package that's equivalent to the UK national minimum wage, which has increased significantly in April, will now apply to seafarers basically on ships delivering goods or persons at least 120 times a year to a UK port. Now, the Act will only apply while the ship is actually in UK waters. That is in accordance with the principles under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which I'll mention later, and also the principle of, flag state prominence in terms of social conditions on ships. So that won't conflict with that. And any extension of the a higher wage for ferry workers outside UK territorial waters will need to be brought in cooperation with working with other countries, for instance, national minimum wage corridors, etc. Been also carrying out a lot of consultation and lobbying work. Nautilus responded to the UK's review of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, about a year ago. Now, this in itself won't amend UNCLOS. Only the United Nations can amend it, and it's quite an old convention now, December 1982, made in Montego Bay. However, we put forward our concerns on UNCLOS. We think it's generally a good framework for the Law of the Seas, but one of our main concerns is this lack of a real, genuine link between flag states and the ships that are registered with them. We think that needs to be strengthened. Now, it's hoped that some of the positive outcomes from that review will hopefully help us promote the concept of the UK pushing for a review of UNCLOS on the international stage. So we hope that happens in due course. Going to turn now to some of the legal work sections of the report. Just bear with me. So we're still running the Nautilus 24/7 helpline, which has been very useful, and I think it'd be fair to say it'd be difficult to see how we could do without this now. It started about 10 years ago, and during the pandemic, I think the average number of calls we got per month went up 5-fold. We were sitting at about 22 calls per month before that, and then they went up to just over 100. And remained high during the pandemic, and now it's fallen back to about 40 calls per month. So even post-pandemic, if we can say we're in that stage, you know, calls are still double what they used to be. On the personal injury claims, in the period of this report, we've recovered about £500,000 in compensation for members. And again, all the personal injuries, you know, we get slips, trips and falls, hearing cases, mesothelioma. More lately, actually, there seems to be an increase in mental illness cases, so, you know, stress, anxiety and depression. Employment claims, you know, we have recovered 1.2 million in the last 2 years on employment cases. Now, this includes all employment cases, whether it's, you know, UK-run cases in the UK employment tribunals, or, you know, the claims that come through from the yacht sector. We have unfair dismissal claims, unpaid wages, annual leave issues, settlement agreements, discrimination, repatriation issues, etc. And then we have maritime incidents. So one of the biggest cases we were working on over the past year, there was a collision last December, just off, well, between Sweden and Denmark, and we had a member on the Scott container collided with a ship called the Karen Hoj. Tragically, the 2 seafarers on the Karen Hoj were killed, and the member was actually imprisoned after pleading guilty to some offences. But we did get him a lawyer in Denmark, where he was eventually taken to, because the Karen Hoj was actually flagged in Denmark and the seafarers were Danish. Now, obviously, you think, why did he plead guilty? Well, I got so much information from the Danish lawyer, but what I found with my experience in dealing with both the Swedish lawyer when he was in Sweden and then in Denmark was they're incredibly tight at giving out information even to the union's lawyer. In the UK, I usually hear quite a lot about what's going on. They really were putting the shutters down. So I'll leave it to you to conclude why there was a guilty plea. But sometimes people are advised to plead guilty because they'll get a discounted sentence. I've been providing training over the last few years. Some of that's been provided internally to Nautilus staff on MLC issues and GDPR, to ICE1, or Nautilus 24/7 providers. And also I recently took part in an ILO training course for lawyers and judges to increase awareness of lawyers in general about MLC issues and seafarer problems. And I'm also responsible for overlooking the union's GDPR compliance as the union's data protection officer. So that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. And the next one on the stage is Andrew Jones.
Break your leg. Good morning, conference. My name is Andrew Jones. I'm the Director of Care and Welfare for the union. Started in May and fully enjoying my new role. It's a privilege to be stood here to represent the union in terms of what the welfare and care sector does. I'm based over at Mariners Park. Those of you who have never been there, it's an amazing site. We've got over 180 residents who live there. some of them in individual living accommodation, supported accommodation, and then 36 people within our care home. Over the pandemic period, it's been very difficult for our teams in terms of dealing with the patients, the deterioration and the deaths of those patients, and then the sort of mental health and well-being as a consequence of that. So I've been really mindful since I started about how I can help the health and well-being of the members of teams, and I've actually put health and well-being sort of sessions in place recently where somebody's actually coming out and doing mindfulness and health and well-being support to the teams. In terms of the actual park itself and what it does, it creates a real friendly society. It creates a self of well-being and sort of belonging of the residents on the park, and the pandemic really affected that. So I was really mindful when I started Maris about how do I get these residents to get back to normality? What can I do? So basically, I had a residents meeting and sort of had an open forum with a sort of a really strong agenda. And then from that, they would then created a residents sort of subcommittee or a forum really about ideas and how we can sort of, one, deal with the issues raised in the meeting, but also how we can bring people together. So since then, we've had loads of meetings, we've had loads of events, loads of get-togethers, and it's really sort of, in my opinion, a real sense of energy back into the park where people are now engaging with each other. And those that are sort of isolating themselves and knocking on the door and asking why, you know, please come with us. So that's just sort of a little overview of the park and what I've sort of done with the residents. Okay, in terms of the sort of outside of the park experience of how we help retired and needy seafarers, our caseworkers do an absolute excellent job. We've got 6 of them currently from Hull down to Southampton and Portsmouth who were able to change the lives of somebody just asking for a few £100 because they're living in a car and need some food and drink, to then able to get them into accommodation, get the pension entitlements that they're wanting, that they should be entitled to, and then also getting the social money that they should be getting. So some cases we've had where people have been asking for £300, £400, and they've ended up getting over £170,000 into their bank account, which is absolutely amazing. So I communicate my caseworkers every couple of weeks. They come to the park every quarter, and I really want to try and engage that sort of belonging together with the caseworkers so that if they've got any ideas, we can sort of pool it together and then make it happen. In terms of the sort of the work that you'll see that we've actually created, we've actually made sure that we're making developments in the park. You know, we're not sat still. We've got the 4 extra bedrooms in the care home. We've done the balconies. We've done sort of what we say minor works, but we've actually been able to get funding for that. So by going out to the MCG, which I've talked about in the report, and other local charities, they're actually supporting us to make things happen, which benefits the staff because they see development. You know, we're not sat still. We're not spending anything. You know, it's sort of concerning where we're up to the moment. But most of all is that we're making things happen for the residents so that you see improvements. 2 other major benefits, the Admiral nurse and the physio. Massive difference to the park. A lot of people now are suffering from dementia, and it's going to get worse. So it's important that we really get that Admiral nurse service, really early intervention to help. And the same with the physio, because as soon as we get early intervention, we're stopping that dementia and that physio, the rehab of that person earlier rather than later. And I am going out to the funders to try and get more hours for those 2 services. We'll then talk about infection prevention and control. The systems that we've got are very robust, and we work very closely with the Wirral Council and with the CQC, and we recently had an inspection in May where they came out and said that our infection control procedures and controls are very thorough and very good. The exciting part of what one of my roles at the moment is the new build project. We've recently got planning application. We've recently got a grant fund to support that building project, and myself and Ollie are going to discuss that in more detail this afternoon. So if anybody got any questions, please raise those questions then. I'd also like to a special thank you in my report, which I have done, to the Merchant Navy Welfare Board and Trinity House for the vouchers that they gave to our staff. It was a really good boost at that particular moment in time. A lot of them were down, a lot of them were still a bit worried in terms of like the people that they seen pass away and family members, people within the home, and I think it gave a really good boost at that particular time. So thank you very much to those two charities. I think for myself and sort of what the report, or tried to articulate in the report, is that real strength of belonging. And I really want to make sure that I really do make sure the union and those charities with the MCG consistently come together. We have 2 weekly meetings we call it the crisis group at the current moment in time. And I'm also able to engage with them in terms of governance issues, policies, procedures, systems, and really want to make sure that we continue to work with them and obviously yourselves. I'd just like to finish by saying thank you. I know it's a very brief, but I just wanted to be direct. And if any of you wants to visit the park, please get in contact with me. Any questions or queries related to the report, also come back to me also. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody else.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And with that, we'll ask Mark to go to the rostrum.
Okay, my job now is to just wrap up the presentation of the report. It started with me introducing it. Now I'm just going to close off that so that we can move into your questions. And please don't be shy. You will have questions, no problem. Nothing's off. Nothing's off. Well, as long as it relates to the report, Stephen. I don't want to go. I want to go too far off piste. Nothing's off piste. Anything that we've been doing over the past few years, what your experience is in the companies that you work for, or the organisations you work for. If you want some answers, you want some raising some issues, then please take the floor. What I will say, to save me coming up again, Chair, is that I would like to formally move the adoption of the report. When we've taken your questions, I'm sure the Chair will then look for a somebody to make that nomination, to second that proposal. Sorry, Chair, I'm getting confused this morning. It's been a long day already. It's because I'm so excited, so motivated by what I've just heard from my colleagues, what you have just been presented with. I wanted in my wrap-up just to stress that everything we do, and this might sound a bit pat, it's all about you. It actually starts with the general meeting. It started with the general meeting in 2019. We adopted a strategic plan and a 2030 vision, which was about looking beyond the normal 4-year planning process cycle, a bit longer, looking at some of the risks, some of the pressures we're under. We didn't know about COVID at that point. We didn't know about war in Ukraine. We didn't know about economic collapse and calamity. Nonetheless, there were plenty of other issues that we needed to address. The demographics of our membership, the environment, the need for a just transition, to invest in skills, to allow the maritime professionals of today to transit from where they are now to deal with new fuels, new technology, automation, etc. Our strategic plan addressed many of those issues and directed us, set out in broad terms what our work programme should be. The 2030 vision directed us towards the objective of achieving sustainability. That's about us having the resources to do the things that you need us and want us to do, the things you deserve us to be working on. And many of the speakers have highlighted, and the report covers many of the issues that we have been working on to deliver that sustainability, whether it be things like saying post-COVID, do we need 2 substantial offices in the UK? Can we take the opportunity of hybrid working, working more flexibly? Can we respond to our staff's needs and demands in that respect? Can we save money as a consequence? But throughout all our work, I hope you've heard people, I hope you've picked up, as I have, colleagues talking about partnership and collaboration, about improving the services and benefits to you, our members, using technology to be innovative and to save money. Of course, that's a common theme. You've heard about many successes. You will sense, as I do, how proud and how excited my colleagues are about their achievements, because they should be. But we're also honest. We know there's more to do. We know we have to continuously improve. Not least, I highlight in particular, the challenges our organising team face in responding to the cost of living crisis with RPI now. I think last month's RPI was announced at over 12%. And that presents real challenges for us industrially. I want to particularly highlight David's role, our P&T work. Actually, that's a one-union activity led by my colleague Marcel van den Broek, who's here from the Netherlands with David. There's a lot of overlap also into legal with Charles and other colleagues who support that work. But future-proofing those maritime skills, securing your employment, your jobs, and future job opportunities and training opportunities in the context of that just transition that I mentioned is really, really important. When I think about the real need, how many years we've come here and we've been listening to our young members, their experience as cadets. For all the positives, and I would say there are plenty, from the tonnage tax experience and the commitment and their obligation to train cadets, we know that the training experience has not been good for everyone. Too many of our members have had a poor training experience. And I'm pleased that we are starting to see a change of culture when we talk about the Maritime Skills Commission, about the Cadet Training and Modernisation program that's flowed from that, the work that David is doing to improve the training experience, to put cadets at the centre, not to make them a commodity, but actually to make them a valuable resource and investment in the future of maritime skills in this country is really important. And someone's already mentioned the fact that the bursaries that are paid to cadets have stagnated and been frozen for the past 10 years. And in a small way, which I hope will have an impact, the Maritime Educational Foundation 2 weeks ago agreed to increase the bursary that it pays to MEF-sponsored cadets from £800 a month to £1,000 a month, which is a significant increase. Still more to be done, I acknowledge that. And I'm hoping that that will send a message out to those cadets who are sponsored and only receive that minimum bursary. Mostly that was driven, by the way, by the increase in smart funding from 30 to 50%, which David highlighted. I also want to highlight and forgive all my colleagues who don't get a particular mention from me right now in this quick sum up, this quick wrap up. I did want to acknowledge that Andy Jones, who's only been in the job of Director of Welfare and Care for 6 months, has hit the ground running. He has been handed a portfolio that I have to say was in good shape, but we can always improve. That's our mantra, continuously improve. But his predecessor, Mick Howard, who's the welfare manager, oversaw the work of welfare throughout COVID-19, and you will, I'm sure no one has been untouched by that and have family experience and know about residents of care homes. There was some shocking treatment of dementia patients, of people in care, our loved ones in care. My own father was was trapped, stuck in his care home throughout that period. Thankfully, he survived due to the dedication of care workers, and I have a very strong emotional connection with that. But at Nautilus Welfare, my heart just goes out with immense pride for what our team did for those that we care for in Nautilus Welfare. And that is something that you should all be proud of, since it is our role, is our job, Nautilus International and the Nautilus Welfare Fund that we administer. And Andy did mention, just on the theme of partnership and collaboration, we are advancing a new project, a new development at Mariners Park. We never stand still. If you stand still, you end up going backwards because everybody else moves forward. Things progress. So we're always on the front foot. We're always looking for new developments and new ways of enhancing the welfare service we provide at Mariners Park. And that new accommodation that we've received the planning permission for, 27 two-bedroom flats, will help us support the need that there is out there and the growing need over the next 50 years for maritime professionals, necessitous maritime professionals, to quote directly from the charity objectives, and their dependents. We'll be able to satisfy that. We'll also be able to future-proof the union's requirements for offices. If anybody's been to Mariners Park, the green copper-roofed building that's at the end of Warwick Drive is falling down. It's either Steve Duran or Derek's office. It's got a huge, great big crack up the wall. If we don't do something about that soon, we'll be digging Robert out of the rubble. Robert, because he was looking at me and nodding. I'm not picking on Robert, but he says his office is a storage room for all the memorabilia that we have. So that's a really important part of the work that we're doing. Sorry, I think I got too close to the mic. And of course, Andrew was also very well placed to call out and recognise the work of our caseworkers. For those of you who are not familiar, they're supported by the Nautilus Welfare Fund with external grant support from other charities such as Trinity House, Merchant Navy Welfare Board, and Seafarers UK, the Seafarers Charity as they are now known, for many years. And they go out and they find the hidden seafarers. They find those seafarers who are suffering and have not got access to all the benefits that they're entitled to, that they probably pay taxes for all throughout their working lives. And we connect them. We make sure that they're being supported as they should. Now, again, in the spirit of collaboration and partnership, during COVID, we were able to also ask our caseworkers to look out for members. Bear in mind, the Nautilus Welfare Fund as a charity is about all necessitous seafarers who have served in the UK fleet, essentially, okay? So they have a much wider scope, and they need to be focused on that, of course. Nautilus International is about its members. Where there's an overlap, obviously, that's not an issue. But it was pleasing during COVID to make that exceptional step to make sure that we were able to help, particularly those seafarers who are stuck at home and could be suffering financial difficulties because they were unable to join the vessels. Chair, probably taken 3 times more than you wanted me to take, but if you would, you're nodding very furiously. I don't really like that. You really want me to get off?
I want you to come and sit beside me. And
all right, look, it's 12 o'clock. I think I was due off at 12. Give me 2 minutes. 1 minute? Okay, I'm going to have to go fast. I said earlier that there was no benefit of COVID. It was just a negative experience. If you want me to, I think there's a silver lining in the cloud. And that is that there is a big conversation, there has been a big conversation about our industry. There is a recognition now that we are key workers, and we should be key workers as we want to be forever, not just during the crisis. That conversation needs to be exploited. The UN Secretary General is talking about you and your industry. The IMO is talking about it. The ILO is talking about it. The WHO is talking about it. IATA, I could go on. They're all talking about our industry, and they're all saying they don't want to repeat the mistakes that were made during COVID. That's a positive. We do have to turn it around. We can't lose 8% of our seafarers every single year because of the way they were treated. We have to turn that around. Government has to turn that around. We have to build back fairer. Colleagues, we do punch above our weight, Mickey. You're absolutely right. I'm immensely proud of everyone. All of you here, all of our members, all of the staff. I'm immensely proud to be your GS, and I'm really grateful for the support I get from the UK National Committee. That was 2 minutes. Thanks. And I move the report saved me coming back. Now questions.
Yeah, we'll have questions from the floor. Any questions? Jessica, if you come to the rostrum, please. If anybody wants to pose a question but doesn't want to come to the rostrum, you can do it on the Slido app. You'll find it on there.
Sorry, Jessica, 177255. I've just got a question for David, as ever. Sorry, David. Although it's very laudable that the Smart Fund has gone up from 30 to 50%, that's terrific. And I know that there have been huge efforts being made for bringing new cadets and people in. My question would be is, you were talking about incentives for taking on the cadets after they've been qualified as qualified officers. What incentives and how exactly are we going to hold employers and people to task to make sure this actually happens? Because there's an awful lot of lip services get paid. They get the benefits as employers, and the cadets or the future officers don't and seem to have to fight very hard for that. So my question would be is, what incentives and how are we going to keep them in line?
Thank you very much, Jess. There's possibly a couple of questions, so if you want to keep a note of the questions and then respond to them at the end, please. Any other further questions from the floor? We'll start with Dawn, and then we'll have Mohammed.
Yeah, hi, Dawn Franklin. This is a Union for Seafarers for Everyone. I would like it to be extended beyond cadets and to apprentices and apprenticeships as well, just to make it clear that it's for everyone working at sea.
Thank you, Dawn. Mohammed, would you like to come to the rostrum, please? Oh, oops, sorry. Here.
Good morning. My name is June, number 1216974. This is my first time to join in the conference. Now, my question is, I would like to address the question to the chairman and everyone, all of us here. Now, we're talking about the welfare of the crew. But firstly, I work with a mission to seafarers in Liverpool Centre. Prior to that, I work as well with Apostleship of the Seapack in South Wales in Melford Haven. Now, we're talking about I've heard always about the welfare of the crew. Wages, staying long on board and then not home on time on the contract. But there is a mention earlier about the blacklisting when you are raising your concern. I had often more complaints from the seafarers in face-to-face in my daily work in the mission. They're complaining about such things as food, salaries, overtimes, and everything. But every time when I told them, do you really want to raise this question? Because I can answer it to you, but I can refer you to ITF, whoever is the individual who can assist you. But when we mention about it, they will step back. For some reason, they are scared that they will be blacklisted back home or to the agency. Now, it's been like this since, I think, way back 2017 when I joined the conference in China with Apostleship of the Sea World Conference. This has been mentioned many, many times. But my question is, have we got any solution or maybe assurance to our members or our seafarers that when they raise complaint, they will be protected, that they will not going to be in trouble with the company or the agency where they work with? That's my raised concern only. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions from the Clive?
Well, good morning, conference. Clive Evans, Chair of Professional Technical Committee, number 426107. This is to do with communications. I have a bee in my bonnet. I've said it before and I'll say it again. During the pandemic, I asked the question, what happens if all the ships at sea cannot communicate back home to the ship owners or the families, i.e. satellites get knocked out?
I asked 6 questions via Admiral Lord West through the House of Lords to the UK government. The answers were rubbish. I said, what is the contingency plan if there is no communication satellites available? And they just couldn't answer it. There is a contingency plan for the Royal Navy, because Admiral Lord West asked me to look at it, and I did, and it's there, which we can't talk about really. But the underlying question, number 6, well, if anybody wants to know, I have a PowerPoint presentation and I can give it you. And I'll give it to Communications Department. I said, what is the contingency plan if it all goes south? They said there is a contingency plan. Then we said, what is it? No answer. So we went to some masters on ships and we asked them, in your safe, have you not got a brown envelope which says what to do in the case of a warlike situation or an emergency? Nobody's got anything in the safes anymore. There used to be what used to be called a DEMS envelope in a master's safe. That's not there anymore. So I think the union needs to ask the government, what is the contingency plan if there is a loss of satellites communications, and can they let the union know? I know it's a sensitive subject. You cannot pass this around the public because it is sensitive. So I would ask the union, I don't know whether they can do it through a motion or something, but talk to the government and ask them, what is the contingency plan? Can we find out what it is, and can they tell the ships what it is? Because if the satellites go out, you're at sea, you can't order spares, you can't do medical, you can't do anything, and that's my beef. So let's hope we can do something.
Thank you. Any other further questions? None in the room. Just so as you're aware, there's a Slido poll running, and we'd ask you to have a look at it in the coffee break, which will be following shortly. And to get access to it, the code is UKBC22, and the password is Brunel 2022. I believe we've got Helen's going to do the questions that have been posted on Slido. If you could come up, please, and do them.
Hello, we've got 3 questions that have come through on Slido. So the first one, I've got 3.
There was another one added.
It's dropped off. Maybe it's been deleted?
Oh, it has, yeah.
Is it rude?
I couldn't say. Okay, fine, thank you. Perhaps you can do the 4th one. So I'll do the 3 that I've got up on my screen now. Firstly, will UNCLOS stop minimum wage equivalent being enacted in UK territorial waters? Secondly, the welfare work shows a lot of effort has gone to supporting those who need it most. What are you most looking forward to for the future? And the 3rd one I've got is, what does the recruitment pipeline for new members look like for 2023? More yachts focused or more mixed?
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
I think not Charles, David, if you want to come and address the ones that you have.
Thank you. I'll start with Jessica and the incentives to employ newly qualified officers. So the scheme that's been announced is actually very generous. They're offering, basically, they've fallen over themselves not to say that they're subsidising employment, but they are subsidising employment. They're offering up to 50% of eligible costs towards a second COC, which they are allowing companies to include wages in. So they are basically subsidising the employment of junior officers without stating that they're doing so. So first of all, it is a very generous incentive. They're also offering similar sums of money to self-supported officers. So if your company's not paying at all, they will basically give the junior officer the money that they would have given to the company to fund their training. And when it comes to holding them to account, obviously we've been here before with Smart Plus and the fact that companies made big promises about how many they were going to recruit and then it never came through. To be fair, their assessment that the procedure was overly complicated and didn't encourage uptake was, you know, there was some truth in that. But basically in this procedure, they will be required to make a commitment to increase the number of junior officers that they employ, and that will be audited by the MCA. What the consequences if they don't is, you know, it's only just, the AIM notice was published about a month ago, so we don't know to what extent and how strict they're going to be on that. We hope it will be relatively strict, but it is significantly stricter than it was before with Smart Plus, which all they needed was a vague commitment, which they had no obligation to follow through on. So I think that's that one. What else did we have?
John's one about the apprenticeships.
Apprenticeships. Sorry, so you were, sorry, the question was that you think the support should be also extended to those doing apprenticeships. So at the moment, I mean, there is an officer of the watch apprenticeship in the pipeline, but most training in the UK apprenticeship training is for ratings. So there are, through the Slater Fund, administered by Nautilus, there is obviously funding available to get them to the next certificate, which is the UKCO, you know, their first certificate of competency. So I can't see how this particular initiative would apply to ratings, but there are things available. Clive, on, obviously we've spoken, where are you? There he is. We've spoken at great length on this satellite situation. You've done a lot of good work getting the issue raised by Lord West in the House of Lords. I have had discussions with MCA and other various organisations, including the Hydrographic Office. First of all, they have recognised the country's reliance on GPS in general, and there was a document called the Blackett Review, which basically highlighted how disastrous it would be if we were to completely lose satellite communications, and they are taking steps to improve that situation, but unfortunately a lot of that is very hush-hush and they can't really tell you exactly what they're doing. But speaking to staff at the MCA, there are various things in development which will just increase resilience. I don't think there's likely to be any success if we say we need to build a whole new land-based backup system. But as more and more resilience is built in, there's obviously satellite communication, new private enterprises such as Starlink and OneWeb, which can be used to augment position. There's various other things which just add more and more resilience as we go, and hopefully get to the point that it's sufficient. But it is recognised at the moment it's not. And there was a question on Slido about cadet outcomes, and would improved cadet outcomes improve recruitment into cadet training? I believe it would. I don't think it's the only thing. I think perhaps I have a slightly skewed view of the cadet training situation at the moment, because when everything's going swimmingly, cadets don't email you to tell you that it's all going fine. But there are a lot of issues being reported at the moment, and we're still, the industry's in a position where I think where a lot of people that come into it are doing so because they know somebody, or it's been recommended to by somebody else, or there's someone in the family. And when we have all of these issues that are added on top of one another, be it poorly designed exams which result in ridiculously low pass rates, be it no sea time because the Chinese-owned company doesn't find it convenient to provide it, whether it be terrible conditions on board, word gets around, and I think that definitely, and obviously the point on the pay as well, when as an apprentice after your second year you're entitled to the national minimum wage, and on a cadet ship you're getting £800 a month. I think all of these things added together, you have to ask yourself, why would you, if you'd heard all of this and you were looking at what you were going to do, it would certainly discourage you. So I don't think there's one big issue, but if we were to be able to improve all of those, and the the outcomes is a big thing, and the exam pass rates, it would definitely improve it. And I think either you or Martin could probably cover off the UNCLOS issue. Or UNCLOS. Yeah, yep, okay, thanks.
Thanks, David. We'll move on to Mark. Move on to Mark for the answers.
Yeah, just to save time, and I hope my colleagues don't mind, I'll try and field hopefully the rest of the questions, including the ones online. To answer Jun's question about blacklisting, yeah, he's absolutely right. It's been around as long as shipping's probably been around, and had the privilege many years ago to host a seminar on board the Global Mariner. For those of you who've been around long enough will know that the Global Mariner was a ship that I looked after in my ITF days. We were in the Philippines, we were in Manila, we had a conference, we had the recruitment agencies in, and we warned them about blacklisting seafarers. Of course, that was pre-MLC. My answer, because you did specifically say, what's the solution? I think the answer is to continue to give confidence to seafarers that they can use the complaint procedures, the confidential complaint procedures that are provided for in the Maritime Labour Convention. You know, and it's a leap of faith for many seafarers, and particularly from the leading supply countries like the Philippines, to officially and formally report their complaints, their concerns, their issues when they're being denied their rights. And that's because they've been blacklisted in the past for stepping up and vocalizing their concerns and their issues. If they reach out to the ITF, if they reach out to their unions, if they reach out to us in the UK, whether that be through the Merchant Navy Welfare Board, through the Missions to Seafarers, through Stella Maris and others, then their concerns will always and should always and must always be treated in the utmost confidence. There are, of course, examples of where that hasn't happened and individual seafarers have suffered blacklisting. I don't deny that. But I think the solution really has to be that we have to make sure that the MLC provisions are robust and that they are enforced and applied, and that seafarers have confidence to report their issues and get them resolved appropriately. And I think that is ultimately the only way we can sustain the end of blacklisting. Incidentally, in the UK and in the Netherlands and many other countries, well, in all countries, frankly, that have ratified the MLC, blacklisting is illegal. And when it happens, we need to call out the people who do it. And I'm pleased to be able to tell you that the International Transport Workers Federation is about to reintroduce a system which I began in my day of identifying the bad actors, the bad employers, the bad crewing agents, ship managers and ship owners, and naming and shaming them for the world to see. So, you know, that's another way in which we can demonstrate to seafarers that if you stand up when you are blacklisted, there is a structure in place, there is people out there who will take action to support you. There's a question about UNCLOS stopping the minimum wage equivalent being enacted in UK territorial waters. Simple answer is no, it won't. UNCLOS guarantees freedom of navigation and the right to innocent passage. That is not what ferries are doing. Ferries are calling into UK ports, and therefore it is fully within the reach of the UK to apply standards on those vessels. The issue is, of course, when they then transit, leave the UK and go into international waters or go into the waters of another country, which is why part and parcel of these measures, not provided for in the Act or the Bill, sorry, is the Secretary of State's proposal for minimum wage corridors, which means essentially we need to have power in our waters, and we need our neighbours to have similar powers in their waters. And there's an awful lot of work going on, not only within ITF and the European Transport Workers Federation. Danny's leading on this for us, bringing those other unions together. Of course, we have our branch in the Netherlands as well, to get the other unions galvanized around the same issues that we are faced with because of P&O ferries, to work together with their governments to get these corridors, these minimum wage corridors in place, so that we can eradicate social dumping, and we can stop the race to the bottom and create a race to the top in employment standards, social standards for seafarers. And that's, I mean, you know, you'll hear more about that kind of work when we get to the general meeting next year, when we talk about our one union work. But that's, that in a way, by the way, question from Fraser, he says in every country seafarer unions are fighting the same fight. How can we work together with our partners to learn the lessons from COVID and P&O ferries? And we do that through the ITF, we do that through the ETF, but also more importantly, we bring our unique brand of maritime professionals trade unionism through the Nautilus Federation, which brings together 20 like-minded unions of maritime professionals from as far afield as Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore. I'm going to miss someone. They're not here, so I can't offend them. United States, and several of the reports that you've heard through the course of this morning have highlighted how we've linked up with those unions. Somebody mentioned connecting with our American affiliates. Charles mentioned the case of the death of 2 Danish seafarers off Sweden. The Swedish affiliates of the Nautilus Federation and the Danish affiliates of the Nautilus Federation were immensely supportive in terms of accessing legal support for the member that was charged in relation to that very sad incident. This is an example to all of you and to Fraser, who asked the question, of how we work together with our partners, with our sister trade unions globally and regionally and within our own federation. The welfare work shows a lot of effort has gone to supporting those who need it most. What are you most looking forward for the future? Well, I guess I might have hinted at that already with the new development is a really important step forward. It's a constant challenge to maintain the very high standards that we operate our care home, for example, or our domiciliary care, where we reach out not only to those who live in Mariners Park, but in the community surrounding Mariners Park and the field, supporting them, the caseworkers. We want to expand the caseworkers. We obviously want to get the development across the line so we future-proof incidentally, that will also put the charity on a much firmer, sustainable basis in terms of its own finances. I mean, it has assets and resources, and obviously they're there to be used for charitable purposes, but we have to, have to balance the books. So we have to go for grant funding to support our work, whether it be a physio, whether it be the Admiral nurse who deals with end-of-life care in the care home. All of these things need constant attention. So my greatest hope is that, I know we will remain focused on taking the charity forward, continuously improving. And the last question on Slido, and I'll just quickly check my notes in a second to make sure I haven't missed anything, but the question was, what does the recruitment pipeline for new members look like for 2023? More yachts focused or more mixed? I would say we will continue to organise effectively in the yacht sector because there's a lot to be done there, but I'm very excited also about our work in the wind farm sector, offshore renewables. There's huge potential there. You read the press, you see where this is heading. The current government says it's going to build more wind farms on land in your dreams. You can just imagine how that's going to go down in the Tory heartlands. They ain't going to vote for huge, great, big. I think they look quite nice, actually, but I'm not sure I want one in my garden, but I mean, they look quite nice. So offshore wind is absolutely the centre to our energy future, our energy security, and not just in the UK, but globally. There's a huge development now, a huge push in America. We're working with our American sister unions on this because they are facing the same issues. They don't want to employ Americans. They want to bring labour from overseas and pay them less. We've got the offshore workers concession, and we need to respond to that. But if we get that right, if we get that over the line, if we drive the government forward on its promises under Maritime 2050 in the People chapter, that's going to generate jobs for the future as well. So that's just one example. I'm not putting all my eggs in just two baskets, yachts and wind farms. We've got, Mickey said it, Gary emphasised it, and so did Derek. We need to improve our densities in our bread and butter, our solid foundations, whether that be in the ferry sector, whether that be in offshore oil and gas, for as long as we continue to drive that and suck that out of the seabed. RFA, there's a number of members here from the RFA, really important to us. We've got to grow our densities there. We've got to renew our commitment and renew our energy in these companies, and get members to support us and join us, because we really are stronger together. We can achieve a lot more when we have time. Time, is that a question? Time. I think I have covered all of the questions. Apologies if I've run out of time and haven't addressed them.
Thank you very much. And just to save time, I'll second the motion of adopting the... So we'll move to the vote now, and thanks everyone for their questions. All those in favour of the adopting the branch conference, show. Against? And abstentions? I'm not giving you the mic yet because we're going for tea.
One final question: why is it so cold? I'm only repeating. Isn't Mickey shivering? Dawn's got a scarf on.
Okay, everyone. We'll have a wee break for coffee now. There's coffee just through in the back there. If we can come back in as close to 10 minutes as we can, please. Try and get the final bits of business done. If we could get everyone to take their seats again, we'll carry on with the business. Start. Okay, everybody, we'll carry on now with the important part of the conference. We're going to start with the motions, and we've got 3 motions being tabled for us, and what you'll hear is somebody talking to the motion. The motion will be seconded, and then there'll be an opportunity to vote on it and debate it and then vote it. So I've been tasked with standing for the first one. So I'll move to the rostrum. Good afternoon, Council. Conference. Ian Mackenzie, 18801, and I'm speaking on behalf of the National UK Committee to propose motion number 1, fair ferries in UK waters. As I'm sure everyone in the room is aware, P&O Ferries undertook one of the most reprehensible acts in modern maritime history by terminating the employment of 786 maritime professionals with no notice, and replaced them with agency labour on exploitive rates of pay, under the watchful eyes of paid militia of private security. P&O Ferries enacted this under the auspices of survival, stating that the scrutiny of Parliament's Select Committee that they had no other choice, as no union would agree to the changes that they had proposed. The CEO of P&O Ferries, Peter Hepplethwaite, who incidentally was voted the world's worst employer at the ITUC conference on Melbourne on Monday this week, stated that he knowingly broke the law and would do so again. Yet we find no further action to be forthcoming from the Insolvency Service with reference to criminal sanctions for P&O Ferries. This demonstrates 2 clear things. Firstly, that P&O Ferries management had made up their mind that they should and could exploit agency workers to maximise business profitability. And secondly, that they choose only to remove those under the auspices of jersey employment, as they knew how to exploit the law itself. Nautilus has been leading the way with government and industry in enacting meaningful legislation, and the outrage that P&O Ferries caused, deliberately planning to circumvent industrial relations and to evade employment legislation, they've rightly led to response from government in the form of the Seafish Wages Bill, a bill that, while not perfect, looks to be a start on correcting some of the structural challenges and gaps that the law had allowed for seemingly unscrupulous employers to price in the cost of criminality. The bill itself is part of a planned range of measures to encompass a 9-point plan that was announced on the 30th of March 2022 by the then Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Sharps. However, it is important to recognise that the work has been ongoing since 17th of March 2022, and work will continue until the wrongs exposed by P&O Ferries have been addressed. This motion seeks to endorse and explain the work already undertaken by Nautilus, whilst actively directing the future efforts to achieving the outcomes needed in defence of high quality, high skilled maritime employment and opportunities. This year the race to the bottom was intensified, and it seems that once more the old idiom that worse things could happen at sea rings truer than ever. Nevertheless, it's thanks to Nautilus that legislation has been progressed international agreements on rates of ferry pay being progressed further, seafarer welfare matters being under scrutiny, and the general public in the United Kingdom and elsewhere are ever more aware of the work that seafarers do. I urge this conference to support this motion and for Nautilus to further involve its efforts in the defence of us maritime professionals. I move the conference to support this motion. Thank you. Yes, please, Steve, if you're going to second it.
Chair, Conference, Stephen Gudgeon 120551, speaking on behalf of the UK National Committee, and as a deep sea gas man, I'm very happy to second motion 1, fair ferries in UK waters. As has been explained, this motion pushes Nautilus to focus efforts on filling the gaps in the UK employment law that allowed P&O ferries to terminate its contracted employees. It seeks to deliver, however, change that will have broader impacts than just those impacted by P&O ferries and those that work in the UK ferry sector. Elements of the work here and the work already undertaken by Nautilus will deliver genuine improvements for hundreds of exploited seafarers. Effort here and now will seek to lay the way for a brighter future for those working at sea in and around the UK coast and beyond. The efforts and battles ongoing directly in response to P&O ferries has indirect consequences that should lead to improvements and go some way to rebalance the unfair advantage that unscrupulous employers use to maximise profits and minimise costs. No company should be able to price in unlawful activity. Unlawful activity should face significant consequence and not be seen as a symptom of a global labour market, but as the consequence of an ineffectual legislation and years of pandering by governments to an industry that proves itself to put people behind its profitability. It is no surprise that thousands no longer wish to work at sea and hundreds drop out of training. When stories such as P&O ferries expose entirely the vulnerability inherent in being a part of the global labour force as a maritime professional. This motion goes quite some way to addressing the issues identified and will actively support a substantial effort and safe industry that people will want to be part of for many years to come. I would urge you, please, to support this motion. I second.
Okay, anybody on the floor for any questions or comments from the floor? Jessica.
Hello, Jessica 177255. I fully support this motion. I do wonder whether we can't collectively, as a sort of responsible individuals, perhaps go after Mr. Hebblethwaite on a legal thing. If we can't do it, if the employers are not going to do it or the government's not going to do it, surely we can go and prosecute him collectively. I'd just like to put it out there. I don't know if anybody would want to support that, but I actually think that's what should happen so that it comes back into the conversation, the national conversation, because it has disappeared again. Seafaring disappears very quickly when it doesn't impact on people. I think it's hugely important that the conversation is kept in the public eye. This could happen to any one of us, could happen to anybody in any employment. And unless we make the employers accountable, you know, Dubai Port's lovely, Thamesgate, thanks very much. Yes, there is all that comes into it, but that doesn't negate the fact that what happened with P&O ferries was illegal. And if we don't stand up for what that should stand for, what is the point of us having any law if a government can, just because of money and a few backhanders or whatever, and when it's convenient do this? I think it needs to be put up there. So perhaps we should think about taking Mr Hebblethwaite on properly.
Okay then, I will move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, show. Against? Abstentions? That's a motion carried unanimously. And could we have a proposer for the second motion, please?
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Malcolm Graves, membership number 118081. My proposed motion is, motion 2 is to defend the right to strike. And that right is enshrined within the Human Rights Act of 1998. And it gives effect to the European Convention of Human Rights, facilitating fundamental rights such as the right to life, the right to respect for private and family life, the right to freedom of religion and belief. Its protection under that Act is universal and is afforded to all, from British citizen, UK resident, migrant and refugee alike. It affords protection against such injustices as modern-day slavery, refusal of education, and discrimination. And it seems to be under attack following from various elements of legislation being introduced in recent times by the UK government. Most recently, this introduction has taken the form of the Transport Strikes Minimum Service Levels Bill, which seeks to make it so impractical for transport unions to organise lawful industrial action as to make that industrial action become almost impossible. No doubt transport strikes are inconvenient for employers, for government, for commuters and transport users. But strikes are also the last resort of transport workers when employers are not willing to listen through reason or engage in negotiation. The bill seems to be committed to ensuring that a minimum service level applies and that is agreed between employer and union or through using a third-party government agency, which is the Central Arbitration Committee. The issue with needing to negotiate a minimum service level at a time where negotiations have broken down between union and employer should be obvious to almost everyone. What might not be obvious is the impact that any such agreement, or more likely imposition by the Central Arbitration Committee, has on some employees and union members. The bill calls for explicit rostering to specify who should be available for work to operate the transport service, removing those named individuals' rights under Article 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Clearly, enabling a government agency, namely the Central Arbitration Committee, to remove people's human rights is fundamentally wrong. Clearly, forcing people to work is fundamentally wrong when they want to withdraw their labour. Please support this motion that will enable Nautilus to oppose the impact of the bill and to align with fellow transport as well as general unions in defence of members' fundamental human rights and basic dignity. I propose this second motion, which is the defence of the right to strike. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And do you have a seconder for that motion?
Sorry, get my notes in front of me. Catch up. There we go. Right. Good afternoon, Chair, Conference. My name is Alexander Day, membership 1209557. To second motion 2, defending that right to strike. mentioned earlier, Article 11 of the Convention only protects the right of peaceful assembly, a notion which does not cover a demonstration where organisers and participants have violent intentions. The guarantees of Article 11 therefore apply to all gatherings, except those where organisers and participants have such intentions, incite violence, or otherwise reject the foundations of a democratic society. Article 11 presents trade union freedom as one form or a special aspect of freedom of association, not as an independent right. Article 11 safeguards freedom to protect the occupational interests of trade union members by trade union action, the conduct and development of which the contracting states must both permit and make possible. However, it does not guarantee trade unions or their members any particular treatment by the state. Under national law, trade unions should be enabled, in conditions not at variance with Article 11, to strive for the protection of their members' interests. Members of a trade union have a right, in order to protect their interests, that their trade union is heard. They must be able to express to their employer the demands by which they seek to improve the situation of workers in their company. A trade union that does not have the possibility of expressing its ideas freely in this regard is deprived of an essential means of action. The right of association includes the following elements: the right to form or join a trade union, the prohibition of closed shop agreements, the right for trade union to seek to persuade the employer to hear what it has to say on behalf of its members, and in principle the right to bargain collectively with the employer. It must also fundamentally, where not a barrier to peace, include the right to strike. For transport workers, it's difficult to see how minimum service provision is compatible with ensuring our human rights are respected when it comes to justified and legitimate withdrawal of workers' labour. And just to frame that, as a group of maritime professionals, that minimum service level could have more effect on us than just the removal of that strike option. Actually, to consider, how many times have you been on a lean man ship where nobody could withdraw their work? How many of your jobs are safety critical? And just think, if we have to provide a minimum service level, that may even come down to not even being able to withdraw goodwill, never mind withdrawing contracted hours and labour. It is difficult to see how this can legitimately be applied by the government as necessary for public safety, or how transport workers' industrial action is somehow inherently more violent. The fact is, transport strikes are an inconvenience and typically high profile. This is seemingly the motivation behind actions to restrict our freedom of assembly and association. Conferences cannot be tolerated, and this motion will enable Nautilus to defend our rights as members of a trade union, as transport workers, and as human beings. Please support this motion. I second.
Thank you, Alexander. We'll just go to the vote for this. All those in favour, show. Against? Abstentions? None seen, so motion's carried unanimously. And the third and final motion, do we have a proposer for the... Thank you, Catherine.
Chair, Conference, Catherine Caseman-Wannell, membership number 207625, speaking on behalf of the UK National Committee to propose motion 3, an end to the offshore wind workers' concession. The offshore wind workers' concession is visa-free working for those engaged in the construction and maintenance of offshore wind developments. Industry demanded such waiver on concession back in 2017 to support bringing skilled workers to build and develop many offshore wind projects. However, in 2022, some 5 years and 6 extensions to the concession later, we still see the same industry calling for the same access to international labour markets, making the same claims about a shortage of domestic skills. It takes significantly less than 5 years to train crew to competence in the offshore wind sector. So what has the industry been doing? Maritime 2050 is the plan and roadmap developed that seeks to deliver the government's vision and ambitions for the future of the British maritime sector. It is also about anticipating the challenges and opportunities ahead and recognising the UK's strengths, so we are all well placed to capitalise on them. The themes to Maritime 2050 consist of UK competitive advantage, technology, people, environment, infrastructure, trade, and security. It is difficult to see how continued extensions to the OWWC are compatible with at least 4 out of those 7. The best time to have ended the OWWC was surely January 2019 at the launch of Maritime 2050. The next best time to end this ridiculous concession that undercuts government strategy and objectives is now. Support this motion, and together, let us end this without further delay. Therefore, I propose motion 3, an end to the offshore wind workers' concession.
Thank you, Catherine. Do we have a seconder, Willie?
Chair, Conference, Willie Jackson, 186592, Council Member. Speaking on behalf of the National Committee to second the motion 3, an end to the offshore wind workers' concession. As already been pointed out, the OWWC is patently ridiculous and incompatible with government aims. However, what has not been pointed out is the very real cost on jobs. In the midst of the challenging economic environment, that further extension is having. Nautilus has reported hearing from offshore wind workers domestically resident in the UK and contracted to commence work on offshore wind project from the 1st of November 2022. Their employment and work contracts being cancelled in line with the latest extension of the concession. These are British resident seafarers in British waters on projects providing energy security to Britain, being dismissed or having their contracts cancelled in favour of cheaper crews. Not only are we seeing these impact on British seafarers, but we are also hearing of impacts on British ships. The offshore wind farm is currently under construction on the Fife coast. It has potential to generate 450 megawatts of renewable energy, which is enough power to supply around 375,000 Scottish homes and will offset over 400,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions each year. It is proud of its Scottish supply chain it uses for the port of Dundee and its support of smaller ports and harbours too. What is not mentioned in the Romanian flag SSCV Malta using Norwegian officers and Filipino crew to construct this major infrastructure project. Nor is it mentioned that thus far handful of British seafarers highlighting their contracts terminated when it becomes apparent that the Filipino crew and Norwegian officers would be welcome to remain working aboard owing to the visa extensions. Your union makes a mention of these things. Some media outlets are starting to make mentions of these things. The inconvenient truth that the UK government policy is stepping on prospects of its own seafarers is not one of the propaganda of those engaged in the offshore wind construction and maintenance. The inconvenient truth that government commitment to maritime security, energy security, and to levelling up coastal communities does not include levelling up those who work at sea. It is time for this to change, for the concession to end, and time to start resistance to a seafarer's employment, especially in sectors critical, substantial and future needs. Please support this motion. I second.
Thank you very much, Willie. And we'll move to the vote. All those in favour?
Any debate? Oh, no. We're in a hurry.
Against? Abstentions? And carried. So I've been asked to give a bit of information. So lunch is going to be through where the coffee was. Once you've had your lunch, we've got access to the museum, so you feel free to go across, have a look around the museum. The symposium is going to have a slightly later start. We'll be coming back in at 20 to 3 for the symposium. If you haven't, that will give you some time to have a wee look at the museum and the SS Great Britain. Is that me? So we'll have access to the museum. It's included in the cost, so you don't have to pay. So that's fine. The Slido, the poll is still there. If anybody's not included, not taking part in it, fire on. Get into it. And the next question is there any other urgent business?
Who dares delay lunch? No, please do if you need to.
Okay then.
Nothing, Chair.
Nothing. So we'll ask you for a quick close, so we can get lunch.
I might need a few minutes.
You can have 2.
2, okay.
You're given an inch, you'll take a mile.
All right, first of all, an apology. The 2018 branch conference was held in Liverpool. You think I might have remembered that. So apologies to Hull. Cardiff was also in the frame. But anyway, it was Liverpool. And I do remember it because it was in the Holiday Inn. And do you remember the dinner? It took hours and hours and hours. And I was the last one to get my fish and chips. I mean, that's not going to go down well, is it? Anyway. Huh? Well, we were all sat at our desks drinking cheap wine, as I recall. But anyway, look, just quickly to take a couple of minutes, just there's a couple of thanks that I need to make. I mean, the first one I need to make is that because this is the branch conference and we stick to our terms of reference, the issues that we can deal with within the kind of branch autonomy within Nautilus International as one unit. So some people don't get a look in really or a mention, and actually that's a bit of a pity because they're really important to providing us with all the resources that we need to do the things that we have been charged to do. And that's our finance team, and Olu's here somewhere, and he leads that team. So I just wanted to thank Olu. Olu is Director of Finance Operations, IT, HR. He actually follows on from a long tradition of multi-skillers and multitaskers. Who remembers Peter McEwen, maybe even Mike Jess as well in the past. But Olu has such a mammoth portfolio. I couldn't do what I do, and neither could anybody else, frankly, without his continued support. So my thanks to him. I also want to thank Martin and also Amanda. Where's Amanda? Amanda's in the back. Amanda's only been with us a few months. She's already made a big impression. They organised everything, and I know it can... I don't know, judging by their short tempers whenever I walk in the room and ask them a question, I suspect that it's been quite stressful. So apologies for asking the stupid questions, but thanks again to both of you for organising today. This is probably in the wrong order, but I wanted to thank you, Ian, for steering the ship safely into harbour. Yeah, I know, it's cheesy, that is. But anyway, he's the chair of the committee. He's also one of the officers of the council, so a great supporter. And I rely on him alongside the other officers of the council and the committee officers immensely. So thank you very much for your help. I wanted to thank Comtech as well, colleagues, for making this feel so wonderful. And the tech was a bit challenging for Helen, which is a bit ironic given your comms, Helen. But I don't think the presentation was any less spectacular for that. So thanks to Comtech and all their staff, and to all the staff here at SS Great Britain for what we've had and what we're about to receive, and access to the museum, and of course this evening's function as well. When I'll say a few more words, you'll be really pleased to know. Obviously, to all of the members for attending, really appreciate your continued support. To everybody who joined us online and took part and asked questions, thank you. I think that's it now. I hopefully haven't missed anybody. That's it. Enough from me. Thanks to everybody. And now I think, Chair, you can release everybody for lunch and a walk around the museum, and see you all back at 20 to 3 for the symposium. Thank you.
Just before you go, another bit of random information. Bristol's the home of the hot air balloon. I didn't want to say it earlier on in case we were accused of going to use the time to fill one. So enjoy your lunch, everyone.